Chapter 1449. The car soldiers sent to Zongnanhai were exceptionally good at driving. Moreover, the bulletproof car had excellent performance. As long as they stepped on the accelerator, the car would instantly speed up and leave the two heavy vehicles behind in the blink of an eye. However, the car soldiers did not do that. They needed to lead them to Tongzhou. They maintained a moderate speed so that the heavy vehicles would not be too far away, but not too close either. Just like when a big fish had taken the bait, the person who hooked it did not need to be too anxious. He just needed to stabilize the fishing rod. Xia Jinyuan and the rest were not done yet. They needed to wait for all the leaders to leave safely before they could put away their guns. The Hunting Eagle team has already captured 4 criminals. The director's intention is very clear. 4 criminals are not enough. He wants to catch all of them in one go. K7's calm voice came from the anti-noise headset. The director will be leaving for Tongzhou in 2 cars, one in front and one behind. Pigeon and T6 will cover him. Yi Qian will drive ahead. Xia Jinyuan, who was putting away his gun, did not stop moving. He said calmly, "How do you know so much? Are you involved?" "Yes, I'm heading to Guilin now. The so-called big committee of this organization is in Guilin. 10 minutes ago, the latest news came from the local area. 4 police officers went into the mountains to investigate and lost contact. There are rumors that the 4 of them are most likely dead. The big committee has ordered the military to send people into the mountains with the local authorities. The Hunting Eagle team will be in charge of clearing the outer area. We will be in charge of clearing the inner area. The car will arrive at your location in 3 minutes. See you in 3 minutes. After that, K7 ended the call. He turned around and saluted the Major General. "Major General, the mission has been issued. We are on standby and ready to depart. The enemy's firepower is unknown. They have foreign support and local people covering for them. The General Assembly Hall and the military have made it clear that the local people are not to be harmed. They will carry out the assassination directly." The Major General, who had just finished attending the celebration, did not return to the military base. He ordered from the city tower, "The Snowfield Brigade will send a total of 6 soldiers to Guilin. 6 soldiers will go overseas to join the foreign operation and cut off the connection between the foreign and domestic cult." The domestic operation was carried out by Yi Qian, Pigeon, K7, T6, Q King, and Bai He. J5, who had just received the mission, immediately set off from the base with 5 of his comrades from the Snowfield Brigade. They were going to cooperate with the foreign military to maintain the peace between the 2 countries. Xia Jinyuan guarded a spot by himself. He put away his guns neatly and stuffed them into an inconspicuous travel bag. Dressed like a mountain climber, he left with steady step. He did not ask about Yi Qian's current situation. The Director General had gone to Tongzhou in order to lure out the cultists who were hiding even deeper. In order to protect the Director General's safety, Yi Qian would definitely charge at the front and draw all the attention to her. Pursing his thin lips slightly, he pressed the button for the first floor of the elevator. His eyes were calm as he watched the elevator door slowly close. Until his line of sight was cut off, his gaze remained on the steel elevator door. Downstairs, Bai He was calculating the time. There were 7 seconds left before the 3 minutes were up. The 2 team leaders, Q King, were ready to appear in front of him. Bai He was a major, fluent in 6 languages, an electronic explosives expert, and a commando during missions. Bai He, who was 1.82 meters tall, had a gentle face and was dressed elegantly. His tie was meticulously tied, and there was even a steel mechanical watch on his wrist. His temperament was similar to that of AJ5. There was a habitual gentle smile at the corner of his mouth, like a mathematics professor in a university, full of the temptation of abstinence. Chapter 1450. This is the first time we're working with Yi Qian. Are there any taboos we can talk about in the car? Bai He jumped into the car first. Then, he asked the captain, "I've been looking forward to this mission for a long time. I'm a little nervous." Bai He Dove. Their Chinese code names were all responsible for assassination and battlefield support. Yi Qian's missions with the Snowfield Brigade were all frontline fighters. Therefore, Dove was the only one who had met Yi Qian in this group of 12 Snowfield Brigade members. She fell in love with him at first sight. She would mention Yi Qian from time to time when she returned. She had even become Yi Qian's subordinate. Xia Jinyuan got into the car and closed his eyes to rest. When he heard Bai he said calmly, "She's very good. She won't be a burden to anyone. Her sniping is accurate, she's agile, she has good judgment, and she's full of adventurous spirit. Working with her will be a feast for the eyes." It was not an exaggerated compliment. It was the truth. "I'm looking forward to it." The white crane smiled faintly as it looked forward with its beastly black eyes. The smile at the corner of its mouth gradually disappeared as the car started moving. They needed to pick up K7. They also needed to wait for K7 to come over to discuss the specific plan of action. Xia Jinyuan did not get enough sleep last night. In order not to delay the upcoming mission, he made use of the time to catch up on sleep. The two of them did not talk much. They gathered their energy together so that they could be in a better state to take on the important mission. Yi Qian did not know that Xia Jinyuan had joined the mission. At this moment, she was talking to Dove and T6. "We're 500 meters away from the highway entrance in the direction of Tongzhou. We'll seize the opportunity to create an accident. You guys protect the director and quickly overtake them." The director's car was still behind and did not overtake Yi Qian's car. The director's car would only overtake them in the few minutes before the accident. In the car, Dove said softly, "Okay, we'll seize the opportunity. Be careful on your side. We'll have to wait for you to come over for the next mission." It was not an easy task to create a car accident that did not involve oneself. The danger factor was no less than that of a gunfight. "Don't worry, I'm looking forward to working with you again." Hearing Pigeon's concern, Yi Qian's eyes flashed with a faint smile. It was light, joyful, and without the slightest hint of fear. This kind of Yi Qian was definitely a real special forces soldier. In the face of imminent danger, she kept calm and did not allow herself to panic. Influenced by her, the soldiers driving the car were very calm. With both hands on the steering wheel, they slightly accelerated and entered the entrance of the Tongzhou Expressway. The people in the two heavy-duty vehicles did not realize that Yi Qian's vehicle was intentionally trailing them. They were quite happy to communicate with their own people. "We're already on the Tongzhou Expressway. When we reach the entrance of the Guilin Expressway, it will be midnight. We can make our move then." Their cars were equipped with walkie-talkies for easy communication. Sitting in the passenger seat, a middle-aged man in sloppy clothes kept chewing betel nut. After listening to the driver's conversation, a trace of panic flashed across his face. Someone on the other side of the walkie-talkie laughed maniacally. "The car is insured. Just hit it. If we succeed, we will have money in our hands, and the committee members will think more highly of us. When the time comes, our whole families will become ministers." Ministers close to the emperor. The young man sitting next to him added, "Uncle, you can also take the money back and marry a wife to warm your bed." The two drivers chatted happily. It seemed that as long as they succeeded in this accident, the future would be beautiful. There would be no more worries, and they could do whatever they wanted in the future. Chapter 1451. As they chatted, everyone in the two vehicles, including the middle-aged man who was initially a little afraid, became more and more excited. He kept rubbing the corners of his clothes and chewing on the betel nut in his mouth. Yi Qian and the others kept in contact and did not give them a chance to make a move in the middle of the night. When they entered a tunnel that was about 3,000 meters long, Pigeon's voice came from the headset and reminded Yi Qian in the vehicle ahead, "It's about time. There are no cars passing by here for the time being." It would take 3 hours to get on the highway. Even though it was National Day, there was still very little traffic. In 1999, there were still very few private cars in China, and there might not even be a car several kilometers apart on a not-so-popular highway. The Tongzhou Highway was such a not-so-popular highway. The tunnel was dark, and 3,000 meters was enough for Yi Qian and the others to make a move. After Pigeon finished speaking, she asked again, "Are you driving now, or is someone from Zongnanhai driving?" It would be best to let someone from Zongnanhai drive. She was just afraid that Yi Qian would choose to drive, because he was afraid of hurting his men. Zongnanhai's brother is driving. I trained with him before. Yi Qian thought Pigeon was worried about the driver's skills, but he did not expect Pigeon to be so worried about her that she did not want her to drive. After all, Xia Jinyuan had said that Yi Qian had the best automobile company in southern province and had trained with the soldiers who were sent to Zongnanhai as automobile soldiers. Hearing Yi Qian's words, he was relieved and said to the Director General, "Don't worry, Yi Qian and the others will be fine. The people in the car will also be fine. The traffic police are already on standby. After the accident, the ambulance and traffic police will immediately rush to the scene to deal with it. You guys are too cautious. What's there to protect an old man like me? I'll have to report this to the General Assembly later. I'm not very satisfied with this arrangement. Ever since Yi Qian suddenly left in the bulletproof car, he used to go to the city gate tower. The Director General's expression had not been good. Although she was a soldier, she was still young. He would rather have something happen to himself than the young lady. Pigeon and the T6 combatants could not respond to these words. They were just following orders and could not possibly question the General Assembly's arrangements. Protecting the leader's safety was also the duty of a soldier. The 2 heavy trucks drove into the tunnel at a speed of more than 90 kilometers per hour. The T6 driver slowed down and pulled away. At the same time, he shot a look at the pigeons through the rearview mirror. They were going to overtake them the moment the accident happened. The car accident had to happen. This would serve as a warning to the cult, breaking through their psychological defenses and causing them to panic. This would achieve the goal of making them afraid. Besides, didn't the other party also want a car accident? Since they had specially sent out 2 heavy trucks, then let's have a car accident as they wished. It was better to have a car accident in the tunnel than outside. At least, with the 2 sides of the tunnel blocking, the car would not rush out of the highway or into the opposite lane. Moreover, when entering the tunnel, they would be limited by the light, so they would habitually slow down. This was equivalent to reducing the risk factor. The pistol was already loaded. Yi Qian gestured to the motorist and rolled down the window. He pressed down on his headset with one hand and counted in a low voice, 1, 2, 3. When he counted to 10, a silver-gray sedan suddenly appeared. It actually sped past the 2 heavy trucks and swerved to the side. Chapter 1452. The second the car sped out of the tunnel, Yi Qian used the rearview mirror to extend the black barrel of his gun outside. After calculating the resistance caused by the car's speed, he silently fired the bullet from the gun. The entire process of shooting, retracting the gun, and then closing the car window again took about 10 seconds. 10 seconds was enough for the T6 to drive the silver-gray sedan to the front. 10 seconds was enough for a car accident to happen. The sharp screeching of brakes rang out in the tunnel. It was so urgent that it scraped against one's eardrums painfully. Immediately after, there was a loud bang as the car hit the ground. The front wheel, which had been pierced by the bullet, lost its balance. The entire car swayed and leaned to one side of the tunnel, causing sparks to fly everywhere. The people in the car were scared out of their wit. They had all come here with their dreams in mind and did not want anything to happen to them. If something happened to them, they would have no money, no future, and nothing. Step on the accelerator and get out of here. Quick, get out of here. The young man's eyes were bloodshot as he shouted loudly. He did not want anything to happen to him. He was a trusted aide of the committee member, and the committee member had already said that he would get this done. He had money, a lot of money. The driver was already panicking, and he became even more flustered after being yelled at. He did step on the accelerator, but it was too late. As a result, the front of the car collided with the front of the car next to it, causing it to tilt uncontrollably. Bam! An even louder crash rang out. The two cars dragged each other for at least 50 meters before coming to a stop. In the car, the middle-aged man, who was originally scared, was twitching. The lower half of his body was drenched in sweat. He was so scared that he lost control of his bladder. The traffic police and the ambulance entered the highway from another entrance. They sounded the siren and sped towards the site of the accident. Yi Qian and the others even brushed past the ambulance and police car. One was leaving the scene of the accident, while the other was driving towards it. "I'll drive when we reach the next toll booth. Thank you for your hard work." Yi Qian unloaded the gun's magazine and said to the driver, "We'll be proceeding with the next part of the journey. You'll need to report back to Zongnanhai." The driver nodded. "All right, we're still 24 kilometers away from the next exit." No one mentioned the car accident. This was a mission, and a very small one. There was no need to discuss it. Pigeon's pleasant voice came through the earpiece again. Yi Qian's ears itched. His voice was pleasant to listen to, but now that it was so gentle, it really did have a hint of gentleness to it. Yi Qian couldn't help but restrain his expression. "Well done, Yi Qian. You used a total of 9 seconds. Beautiful." Pigeon said this purely to praise Yi Qian. Of course, the Director General also said, "The Director General said that you are very brave and capable." It was a very outstanding shooting from the car. The first shot did not give him a second chance to shoot. Relatively speaking, he also did not put himself in danger a second time. Accurate shooting had to be done on the first shot. If there was a need to fire a second time, not only would the enemy be more vigilant, but it would also give the enemy enough time to counterattack. Therefore, when the comrades of the Snowfield Brigade executed accurate shooting, they would only give themselves a chance to fire one bullet. Yi Qian pursed his lips and smiled. Luckily, they weren't driving too fast. It didn't affect the bullet too much. It wasn't outstanding. It's not good to be so modest at such a young age. The Director General has something to say to you. Yi Qian heard the first half of Pigeon's sentence. Immediately after, the Director General's voice came through. It was still so amiable. When Yi Qian heard this, even the coldness in his eyes softened. Chapter 1453. The higher the position of an official, the more approachable he would be. His speech would have the dignity of a superior, but he would also have an amiable side. When it was time to be strict, he would be strict, but in private, he would be amiable. This would show the boldness and breadth of mind of a superior. The high-ranking officials Yi Qian came into contact with were the great leader, Commander-in-Chief Xia, Major General of the Army, Rear Admiral of the Navy, and Director General of the Navy. Every one of them held a high position, every one of them was awe-inspiring, and every one of them was approachable. However, they wouldn't let themselves down just because they were approachable. They would only respect, fear, and look up to them even more. This was a true leader. In comparison, Yi Zhifan was much weaker. He was just a provincial official, but he was displaying his authority everywhere. He spoke in an official tone, as if he was afraid that others would not know that he was an official and had authority. In the face of the director's concern, Yi Jian felt warm in her heart after hanging up the phone. She respected the director even more. This was how a person of high status should be. It was precisely because Yi Qian had come into contact with so many high-ranking officials in her early days that it had a great impact on her growth in the future. She was domineering in the way she handled matters, yet she did not lose her friendliness. Later on, the officers under her all respected her greatly. At 5 p.m., the sky in the north was darkening. Yi Qian and Pigeon received a message from the military at the same time, informing them that the tunnel accident had been dealt with. The 4 criminals had all been sent to the hospital. Their injuries were not light, but they were not serious enough to lose their lives. Yi Qian wasn't worried about the criminals' injuries. He only said lightly, "Lucky? That's good too. Let them stay and let the police see if they can pry any useful clues out of them." Although the criminals were fellow countrymen, they were already standing in opposition to the country. They went against justice, broke the law, and harmed the people and police. To Yi Qian, they were enemies. They were enemies from their own country, their own countrymen. If it wasn't for the fact that the Director General was in the car, Pigeon would have laughed out loud. Yi Qian, what a wonderful person! When the Pakistani side was carrying out a mission, they saw that the children in distress were not afraid of their own danger. They bravely charged into the wolf's den and protected more than 20 Pakistani children by themselves. When he was ruthless, he was very ruthless. He had an exquisite heart that could distinguish between right and wrong. When facing the enemy, regardless of whether the enemy was old or young, he was very clear about the principle of being merciful to the enemy is being cruel to oneself. He did not hesitate to attack, and did not regret it in the slightest. A girl like her was flexible, courageous, and intelligent. Q King had found a treasure when he found her. She dared to say that if the two of them fell out in the future, Yi Qian would definitely have many suitors swarming over. They would even secretly congratulate Q King for finally being dumped and Yi Qian being single again. We will be able to pry some clues out of him. There is a young man who is from the same place as the so-called committee member. He is considered a trusted aide. We will be able to pry a lot of useful clues out of him. Pigeon whispered to Yi Qian before hanging up. At this time, Yi Qian was already driving for himself. The soldiers from Zongnanhai had left from another exit an hour ago. Yi Qian drove alone behind Pigeon and the others, continuing to act as a target. Chapter 1454. The next exit led to Tongzhou. In order to take down the entire organization, the director didn't even care about his own safety and directly announced that he would be going to Tongzhou. Tongzhou was in danger now. Since Yi Qian knew, Xia Jinyuan naturally knew as well. Since they set off late, they bypassed the highway where the accident happened and entered Tongzhou from another entrance. Together with Bai He and K7, they waited at a rest area beside the highway exit for the director's car to arrive. Bai He, who was wearing a suit and tie, exuded a cold and aloof aura. From time to time, he would raise his head to look at Yi Qian to see if they were coming. When K7 saw this, his gaze fell on Xia Jinyuan. Her real boyfriend is here. Doesn't she know how to remind her comrade not to be so impatient? Speaking of which, he hadn't seen Yi Qian in a long time. Last time, when he was captured and almost couldn't make it back, Yi Qian actually snuck into the ST mercenary group to save him and avoided all eyes and ears to contact him. It was undeniable that when he heard that familiar voice, he was so excited that his heart raced nonstop. The second he saw Yi Qian, it was as if he had seen an angel. Yep, an angel with a holy aura. Sitting in the same row as Bai He, he lowered his head and flicked the non-existent dust off his body. Then, he adjusted his tie. There shouldn't be anything inappropriate about his attire. He originally wanted to remind Xia Jinyuan, but now, he was also looking forward to Yi Qian's arrival. Xia Jinyuan noticed the subtle movements of the two soldiers behind him. They were only happy to see Yi Qian because Yi Qian was their comrade. Other than that, they didn't have any other thoughts. There was no need to remind him. He believed that his comrade wouldn't cross the line. Even if he did, he wouldn't express it. He would handle it on his own and wouldn't affect their comradeship. He wouldn't let things develop in a bad direction. It was 5:11 p.m. The three people in the car looked up at the exit of the highway almost at the same time. Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, "Almost there." It wasn't a random guess. Instead, he learned from the Zongnanhai soldiers who were traveling with Yi Qian when he got off the car. Based on the speed of the car and the distance of the entire journey, he could roughly estimate when Yi Qian would arrive at the Tongzhou Highway exit. 2 minutes later, T6 drove out of the special passageway, followed closely by Yi Qian's bulletproof Hongqi sedan. The two cars appeared one after the other in front of Xia Jinyuan and the others. Pigeon and the others did not know that their comrades were waiting in front of them. They came out of the exit and headed straight to the city center. The car drove away without any signs of stopping. Xia Jinyuan's slender fingers tapped lightly on the car window. He said to K7, who was in charge of driving, "The military didn't inform them. They don't know that we're here. Follow the director's car." They didn't say that they were going to follow Yi Qian's car. They needed to escort the director to the hotel first. "I'll take a taxi and follow Yi Qian alone," Bai He suggested. K7 started the car and looked at Xia Jinyuan. He said calmly, "I agree." Everyone knew that the director wasn't the one who was in danger, but Yi Qian. Bai He was afraid that his captain would disagree, so he added, "The car accident has angered them. They're all eyeing the director's car. Right now, only Yi Qian and Q King are in the car. Since we have enough manpower to support our comrades, I can definitely go and support Yi Qian." Chapter 1455. Xia Jinyuan, who didn't urge his comrade to drive, chuckled. His chuckle was low, gentle, and full of ridicule. His deep black eyes looked at K7, who was so cold that he seemed to have no desire for anything, and then at Bai He, who seemed gentle but was actually ruthless. He said slowly, "Yi Qian, she's not weak. It's not a matter of whether she's weak or not. What I mean is, since the situation allows, why didn't you send reinforcements in advance?" Bai He frowned slightly. He didn't quite understand Xia Jinyuan's actions. K7, who favored Yi Qian in his heart, was even more reticent than G3. He still liked to read forensic science books, so he answered on behalf of Xia Jinyuan calmly. "Yi Qian's goal is Q King. She also wants to join the Snowfield Brigade. She wants to join immediately after graduation." Without further explanation, Bai He instantly understood why Q King didn't arrange for him to support Yi Qian. "I see. Then there's no need for reinforcement. Joining the Snowfield Brigade immediately after graduation? Before that, he really needed to train hard. And going on a solo mission was far more dangerous than going on a solo mission. Now that he was in China, he could contact them immediately if anything happened. But if he went on a solo mission overseas, there would be no reinforcement. He could only rely on himself to advance and retreat. If he wanted to return safely, he had to put in some hard work. After knowing Yi Qian's goal, Bai He didn't mention about supporting Yi Qian again. The ones that appeared now were just small fries for Yi Qian to deal with. After he thought it through, Xia Jinyuan smiled as the car started. "We can't not help, but we don't need reinforcements for now. Later, the three of us still have to meet up with Yi Qian." Hearing this, Bai He's smile deepened. "I'm looking forward to it." This was getting more interesting. From Q King's words, he only planned to support them silently. He didn't plan to let Yi Qian know that there was reinforcement. How ruthless! However, for the sake of his girlfriend's safety in the future, Q King did put in a lot of effort to nurture her. As a comrade, he would definitely cooperate and not be a burden to his comrade. K7, who knew which hotel the Director General would be resting at, quickly caught up with Pigeon. When the two cars were traveling side by side, he honked to remind him. Pigeon, who was in charge of observing the car, looked outside and saw Q King waving at him. "Q King's here." "Q King, Pigeon," he said softly so he wouldn't disturb the Director General who was in the car with his secretary. T6 took a quick glance at the car as it made a turn. When he saw Xia Jinyuan, there was a flash of envy in his eyes. How great would that be? He would be able to carry out missions with his girlfriend and deepen their relationship. Even though Jia Xian was tempted to join the army because of what he said, but if she joined the Shuiyu Brigade, it seemed like he was indulging in fantasy. Now that T6 was getting more and more interested in Jiasen, he was trying his best to make her stand out. At the same time, he did not forget to show off his military charisma. This made Jiasen, who was already influenced by Yi Qian, even more eager to join him. T6 felt that there was a need to make his presence known again so that he could coax the girl he liked to join the army. Then he would think of a way to get her closer to him. He didn't ask to fight side by side like Q King and Yi Qian, but only to see her during exercises. The two cars drove along the street and headed to the hotel where the Director General was staying. Chapter 1456. The Director General had 2 hotels in Tongzhou. The other one was used as bait, and Yi Qian was heading to that hotel. The sky gradually darkened until it was completely night. Neon lights were lit up, adding charm to the dark night. The colorful streamers illuminated the streets, adding a sense of mystery to the pedestrians that didn't exist during the day. At 6 o'clock in the evening, a hotel in Tongzhou welcomed an important guest. The manager of the hotel respectfully led the important guest to the elevator. He lowered his head slightly to show his respect for the guest. "This way, please. Be careful, the floor is a little slippery." The Director General walked quickly with a serious expression. After entering the elevator, he immediately said to the soldiers beside him, "The 3 of you, go and support Yi Qian as soon as possible. I don't want to hear any news that is disadvantageous to her." The criminals were all staring at the Tongzhou hotel where Yi Qian was staying. He was very surprised by the military's arrangements, but he had no right to question the military's arrangements. He could only urge Yi Qian's comrades to hurry over. Xia Jinyuan raised his hand to block the elevator door. After the Director General entered, he smiled and said, "We will go and support her immediately. Don't worry, there won't be any bad news. Also, we believe in our comrade. We won't put ourselves in danger. I believe in you too. This mission is different from before. You all need to be more vigilant and protect yourselves. The troops are still waiting for you to make contributions. Your comrades are also waiting for you to return." The Director General did not know that the special forces that were sent this time were super elite special forces. The concern in his words warmed the hearts of every soldier in the Snowfield Brigade. Fighting for the country, fighting for their beliefs, and fighting for the leaders who contributed to the country was an unshirkable responsibility of every soldier. It was also a sacred responsibility. In Tongzhou International Hotel, someone in a room on the 5th floor took out his binoculars from time to time and carefully looked at the entrance of the hotel. When he did not find the target, he put down his binoculars angrily and paced back and forth in the room. "Not here yet, not here yet. Did something go wrong?" He was a little restless. He walked and stopped at times. In the hotel lobby, someone was reading a newspaper. Occasionally, he would look up at the entrance of the hotel, then look down at the newspaper in his hand with a gloomy expression. When Yi Qian came in alone, she started scanning the front of the hall. By the time she reached the front desk, she had already finished scanning the entire hall. The check-in information had already been registered, so all they had to do was take the room card and check in. When they passed by the sofa in the hotel lobby, Yi Qian nodded slightly and looked in the direction of the sofa. Yi Qian had a square face, a beard, thick eyebrows, and a scar at the peak of his eyebrows. He wore a navy blue jacket, light blue jeans, and a black and white ball target. He looked to be 1.74 meters tall and had a rather muscular build. Yi Qian only needed to take a glance at him from the corner of his eye to remember his appearance and what he was wearing. Yi Jian could not help but slow down when she saw the man taking something out of his jacket. Then, the square-faced man took out a phone with a flashing screen and answered the call. "I didn't find anything. Could it be that there's a traffic jam?" You wait upstairs first. I'll keep watch downstairs. No matter when they come over, it's fine as long as they come out at night. Let's get this done as soon as possible and satisfy the committee member." When the words committee member drifted into Yi Qian's ears, Yi Qian's eyes immediately darkened. The leader of the cult was the committee member. He came from a mountain village, did not study, and relied on his mouth to recruit followers. Chapter 1457. Yi Qian lowered her head slightly as she walked into the hotel room. Her eyes darkened slightly. The man in the lobby needed to be dealt with. His accomplice in the hotel also needed to be dealt with. Then, how many criminals were staying in this hotel? What would happen next? Since they wanted to clean up Tongzhou, the Tongzhou police should have made preparations. The director was the bait, so the police couldn't have done nothing. So, what was she going to do next? Yi Jian, who was sitting by the bed, frowned slightly. The Major General had told her that one of her main tasks was to ensure the safety of the director during the grand ceremony, as well as the safety of the director for the next 2 days. Then the problem was, she was not by the director's side now. The second mission was to enter a mountain village in Guilin and find the policemen who had been brutally dismembered by the criminals. The Major General had said that this was her follow-up mission. Since she wasn't protecting the director, and hadn't received any orders to go to a mountain village in Guilin, she was going to be left alone in the hotel tonight. She was just going to be a target. Even if she was going to be a target, the criminals had to know about her. But it was obvious that the other party didn't know about her. Otherwise, the square-faced man would have taken a few glances at her when she walked past him. But he didn't. For a moment, Yi Jian couldn't understand the military's arrangement. She couldn't understand, but Xia Jinyuan knew. He had already guessed the military's intentions when Yi Qian drove into Tongzhou alone. They wanted to use this opportunity to train Yi Qian. That was the military's only intention. Furthermore, they had specifically instructed him not to contact Yi Qian in a hurry and not to allow anyone, including the pigeons, to contact Yi Qian. They wanted Yi Qian to be completely isolated and helpless. Thinking about it carefully, Little Fox had never gone on a mission alone before. She had never been isolated and helpless. It was fine for her to know about this mission, but it would make the director, who didn't know the military's intentions, worried. He didn't have any objections to the military's arrangement. Little Fox had set him as her goal. Her goal was to enter the Snowfield Brigade. She even wanted to join as soon as she graduated. The military would only be stricter with her. As Xia Jinyuan was thinking about this, his face turned cold. Even K7, who was in the same car, couldn't help but stare at him. Focus on driving. Xia Jinyuan, who did not look up, reminded her calmly, people are coming and going, and there are even pedestrians who run red lights. If we get into a car accident in a busy city, we will become a laughingstock. The Tongzhou International Hotel was located on the side of the downtown area. It was bustling with people coming and going. When the car entered the downtown street, it could not help but slow down to avoid hitting the pedestrians who suddenly rushed out. He had already seen the flashing neon lights of the Tongzhou International Hotel. He looked left and right at the busy streets and frowned slightly. If the fire is set in advance, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yi Qian won't give them a chance to commit arson. Xia Jinyuan immediately replied, she won't just sit in the hotel and wait. As long as she finds any clues, she will immediately take action. Besides, the Tongzhou police are secretly ambushing them. The entire Tongzhou International Hotel is under surveillance. No one will give the criminals a chance to set the hotel on fire. Now that they knew the other party's movements, they only needed to catch them in one fell swoop. Naturally, they needed to know the other party's situation at all times. The police of Guilin cooperated with the police of Tongzhou. Tonight, the Tongzhou International Hotel would not be too peaceful. Chapter 1458. Yi Qian, who knew nothing, knew that the hotel wasn't very peaceful tonight. She didn't wait in the room and returned to the lobby with a cup of coffee that was just right. The square-faced man was still there, but he looked increasingly impatient. He would cross his legs from time to time and put them down again. The newspaper in his hand was shaking, and his patience was running out. Yi Qian narrowed her eyes as she walked past. When the man suddenly changed his legs, she walked over without a trace and tripped him. The coffee spilled on the square-faced man's clothes, and she tripped over him. She staggered a few steps forward and fell head first into the sofa. "Do you have eyes?" The square-faced man didn't think he was in the wrong. Instead, he scolded Yi Qian, "Do you know how to walk? You spilled all over me." Yi Qian, who pretended to be unsteady, quickly apologized. Sorry, I didn't pay attention to my feet. I'm so sorry. Are you scalded? If your clothes are wet, I'll pay for it. Or do you want to change in the bathroom and I'll hand it over to the hotel for dry cleaning?" Sometimes, good-looking people were treated well. The fierce-looking square-faced man saw the face of the woman who had spilled coffee on him, and his attitude changed for the better. Although he was still angry, at least he didn't scold her anymore. He only said, "Be careful." After that, he stood up and glanced outside the hotel, then walked towards the bathroom. Yi Qian, who had apologized again and again, looked at the back of the square-faced man. The corners of her mouth turned up slightly. After confirming that he was walking towards the bathroom, she followed closely behind. The man on the left and the woman on the right. Yi Qian pushed open the bathroom door that was slowly closing and hung the "Cleaning in Progress" sign on the door handle of the men's bathroom door. Then she dashed into the men's bathroom. With a click, the bathroom door was locked. The square-faced man, who was taking off his jacket, didn't pay attention to his back. By the time he realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. Yi Jian's movements were very fast. Just as the man took off one of his sleeves, she took a step forward and grabbed the sleeve. Before the man could take off the other sleeve, she picked up the sleeve and covered the square-faced man's head with it. "Who are you? What are you trying to do?" The square-faced man, whose head was covered, didn't even have time to react. All he felt was a blur in front of his eyes. Then, he couldn't see anything, let alone see who was behind this. His other hand was grabbed by Yi Qian along with his shirt and head. Yi Qian grabbed his sleeve and quickly wrapped it around the man's chin. The square-faced man had no chance to struggle at all. Yi Qian nimbly threw him over his shoulder, and his entire body was restrained by Yi Qian. Ugh, let go. Let go." The man's chest was in pain from the fall, and he struggled with all his might. He looked tall and strong, but how could a man without any skills deal with Yi Qian, who was from the special forces? After struggling for a while, Yi Qian knocked him out. Against such a person, Yi Qian did not feel any sense of accomplishment. It was too easy. About 3 minutes later, the square-faced man's voice suddenly came from the bathroom. "F***ck, he's still not here at this time. Will there be a problem? Don't tell me he won't come. Why don't you come out and take a look? Don't tell me you've already entered the hotel and I didn't see you. That can't be. You suspect that you saw wrong?" The voice came from the phone. Yi Qian's eyes flickered as he held the phone and said, "I don't know. Anyway, I didn't see him. Come out and get me. Let's discuss if we should call the committee member." The voice belonged to the square-faced man. Chapter 1459. On the other end of the phone, the square-faced man's partner's breathing obviously quickened. When Yi Qian heard this, a faint light flashed in the depths of his eyes. It was obvious that the other party was not only confused because things did not go according to their plan, but also because their emotions were fluctuating. This was a good thing for her. The committee member has high hopes for us. If we don't even know how to light a fire, how are we going to explain it to the committee member? If we don't do a good job, Mr. Charlie definitely won't contact the committee member for us. The man on the other end of the phone was obviously anxious, as if a broken pot was about to break. Motherf *Cur, if we really can't do it, we'll just set the place on fire at 1 o'clock in the morning. Who cares if the secretary or bureau chief has checked in? Let's start the fire first. Set the place on fire at 1 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Charlie, committee member. Yi Qian, who caught the sensitive words, immediately realized that the square-faced man and the man on the other end of the phone were only able to contact the committee member through a man named Charlie. In that case, these people were all small fry. Small fry also had their advantages. They were timid, afraid, and easily frightened. Let's find Mr. Charlie first. That's fine too. We'll just set the place on fire anyway. Alright, cut the crap. I'll come up and find you. Yi Qian's voice was the same as the square-faced man's. The square-faced man's voice was mixed with a Guilin accent, and Yi Qian's voice was Guilin accent. In her previous life, Yi Qian had been forced by Ying to wander all over the country without a fixed residence. He had also lived in Guilin for 2 months. At this moment, he had really helped her a lot. Come up first. I'll pick you up at the elevator. On the other end of the phone, the square-faced man's partner was obviously out of ideas. He raised his hand and pulled the curtains open again to look down at the hotel. Seeing that there were no cars driving in, he said, "Come up first, quick." He had to know which elevator he was at first. Yi Qian calmly asked, "All right, which elevator do you see? It'll be more convenient for you to wait for me?" "The elevator on the 5th floor. Hurry up." Without the slightest suspicion, the man motioned for his accomplice to come up as soon as possible. It was already so late, but the target still hadn't come up. He didn't know what to do. Then he must be on the 5th floor. Yi Qian muted the man's phone and walked out of the restroom. She walked towards the 5th floor with a calm expression. After a while, she pretended to be nervous and called the man. "You'd better not wait for me at the elevator. I don't know what's going on, but I'm so nervous. Leave the door ajar, and I'll go to your room to find you. Don't hang up, we can contact each other immediately if anything happens." With the same voice as the square-faced man, when Yi Qian went up to the 5th floor, she did not check the rooms on the left to see if there were any openings. Instead, she checked the rooms on the right, facing the main entrance of the hotel. On the other end of the phone, the man also said that he didn't see any cars driving into the hotel. It was obvious that he was looking at the main entrance of the hotel. In addition, the man was timid, afraid of trouble, and impulsive. Other than his own room, she couldn't think of where else he would go. She asked him to leave the door ajar as a test to see if he was in his room. The man didn't refuse. Instead, he happily agreed. After probing for a while, Yi Qian was sure that the man was in his room. Chapter 1460. Yi Jian's search speed was neither slow nor hurried. She strolled along the long corridor that was covered with thick carpets. Step by step, she continued until she saw the door of a room that was about 5 steps away from her. The door was slightly ajar. The other party was also cautious. Although the door was open slightly, the safety chain was still on inside, so he could close the door immediately in case anything happened. With a slight smile on his face, Yi Qian continued to use the square-faced man's accent to communicate with the other party on the phone, instructing him to remove the safety chain. Although the man on the other end of the phone didn't see his companion, he didn't have any doubts when he heard the familiar voice. He even said, "You're finally here. I'm sweating all over." The voice came from inside the room, then neared the door, followed by the sound of the safety chain being removed. Yi Qian, who had been waiting for this moment, flashed out from the side and closed the door. The entire process took about 30 seconds. In the room, a thin and small man, about 1.65 meters tall, about 25 or 26 years old, stared at the uninvited guest with wide eyes. Who are you? What are you doing?" He was knocked down by Yi Qian, who rushed in. Fortunately, the hotel room was carpeted, so he didn't hurt much. As the man spoke, he got up. "What are you doing? You must have walked into the wrong room." Yi Qian, a young girl with delicate eyebrows and neat bangs, was wearing a business suit. No matter how the young man looked at her, she seemed harmless and not dangerous. "Contact Mr. Charlie and tell him the plan." After rushing in, Yi Qian grabbed the silver wire that hadn't been wrapped around her wrist for a long time. She walked past the young man, who was only wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt because the heater was turned on in the room. "By the way, how are you going to start a fire at 1 in the morning?" Up until now, the young man still hadn't realized that something was wrong. When he saw the girl who came in looking like she knew everything, he was even more confused. In fact, Yi Qian was too calm. It was as if he was visiting an acquaintance for a chat. Apart from using a bit of strength to force his way in, he spoke calmly after entering the room. For a moment, the young man was bewildered. When he heard her mention Mr. Charlie, and the fact that she had set a fire at 1 o'clock in the morning, the young man was the first to be shocked. His expression changed as he blurted out, "How did you know?" "I know a lot. We still need to keep an eye on the ground. We can't come up. Keep an eye on this side too." Yi Qian looked around and confirmed that he was the only one in the room. He didn't have any dangerous weapons on him. He sat down on a round chair by the window of the hotel. His eyes were cold as he looked at the young man sternly. "Set fire. If they come on time, it won't be a problem to set fire to them. But they didn't come. It's best to ask Mr. Charlie first." The young man didn't look like a repeat offender at first glance. Yi Jian's half-truth and half-lies, coupled with the imposing manner of a strategist, made the young man, who was originally baffled, suddenly seem to have found his backbone. He quickly sat on another leisure round chair and looked at Yi Jian up and down. After a while, he said, "Who the hell are you? Why haven't I seen you before?" As he spoke, he couldn't help but straighten his body. His eyes were vigilant and he questioned without much confidence, "Tell me who you are first. I'm someone the committee member arranged to help you at any time. Otherwise, how would I know about your plan? The car accident plan this morning has already failed. So this time, as long as the target appears, we must succeed. We can't afford to fail." Chapter 1461. When Yi Qian told him what had happened during the day, the young man's vigilance dissipated. He sighed deeply. "That's right. They couldn't do it and made things difficult for me and Brother Xiong. Mr. Charlie isn't here. All right, I'll contact Mr. Charlie. If he doesn't come, should we still set the place on fire?" Then he glanced at Yi Qian and asked in confusion, "Why didn't my uncle mention that he would arrange for someone else to come? He only told me that old Dong and the others would come to help me. He didn't mention a woman like you." This sentence made Yi Qian feel that something was amiss. It sounded like this young man had some status. Old Dong should be the square-faced man. How many? Where are the rest of them? He had to find them. If you didn't suddenly ask old Dong to come up, I wouldn't have appeared. Old Dong can only stay in the lobby. How can he leave so easily? As for the others, call them now and tell them to keep an eye on them. Don't be impatient. Yi Qian tried to get information from him again. He didn't need to be careful. He used a reproachful tone to get information from him. If you ask this person to come up and ask that person to come up, what if the person you're waiting for appears? Don't you know the identity of the other party? How to get information from him, and how to get the information he wanted as soon as possible. These were all skills that a Special Forces soldier needed to know. After the young man finished calling his companions, the smile on Yi Jian's face deepened. It was the first time he was fighting alone, and he was facing a powerless enemy. He wondered if he was lucky. Yi Jian was indeed lucky. She met a guy who wanted to earn some credit so that he could go back and ask his uncle to put in a good word for him to make a fortune. 5 minutes later, the young man called the other 4 accomplices. After hanging up the last call, he said proudly, "Keep watch. There won't be any problems." One was guarding the back door, one was watching the parking lot, one was hiding in the hotel's computer room, and the last one was at the door opposite the young man. Yi Qian knew that it was about time for him to take action. All he needed was for the other party to contact Mr. Charlie. The clock pointed to 9 p.m. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting in the car, looked at the time and said to K7, "Contact Yi Qian and ask her if she found anything." Yi Qian had planned to keep the young man alive to see if he could find more clues. However, when he heard that his uncle also wanted to meet the committee member, Yi Qian knew that there were no other useful clues. Hearing K7's voice, Yi Qian, who had tied up the young man with the bedsheet, lowered his voice and said, "The criminals planned to set the hotel on fire at 1 a.m. tonight. I have already found several of their accomplices at the hotel, and one of them was not at the hotel." She told them everything she knew so that the three people in the car could hear her clearly through the hands-free mode of the phone. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled at Bai He. He had said that his little fox wouldn't just sit around and wait for death. She was already taking action. "Yi Qian, take care of the other 4 criminals." Xia Jinyuan finally spoke. He said slowly with a hint of coldness in his voice, "No one is supporting this operation. Think of a way to take care of it alone." Chapter 1462. Xia Jinyuan's cold voice came through the phone, and Yi Qian was stunned for 3 seconds. It wasn't because of what he said, but because of his arrival. She had been in contact with pigeons all the way from Beijing to Tongzhou. Why was Xia Jinyuan here? Is there a problem? While she was stunned, she heard his cold voice again. This time, it sounded like an order. Yi Qian's expression was tense as she replied, "No problem, I will deal with the remaining criminals as soon as possible. However, Mr. Charlie needs backup. He is too close to the hotel, and if there is any movement, he will immediately run away." She didn't ask why he wanted her to deal with all the criminals in the Tongzhou International Hotel alone. Faced with an order, she chose to obey. K7 glanced at Xia Jinyuan. Seeing that his captain nodded in agreement with Yi Qian's request, he said to Yi Qian, "Okay, be careful." Just as he was about to hang up, he seemed to have thought of something. His calm voice became a little darker. "A soldier can be a king. Every soldier of the Snowfield Brigade is like that." For a person who was so calm and emotionless to suddenly say something so emotional, let alone Yi Qian, even Xia Jinyuan and Bai He were surprised. No, it should be said that they were surprised. "I understand. Thank you for the reminder." After Yi Jian recovered from her shock, she replied with a smile, "That's great, that's really great. Even K7 cares about me. Does that mean that all the special forces from the Shuiyu Brigade have accepted me as their comrade?" Yi Jian thought. K7 told her that every soldier of the Snowfield Brigade could fight alone. They had the ability to fight 1 against 10. It wasn't that their comrades didn't want to support them, but that they believed in their combat ability. Yi Qian had no problem dealing with a few small fries. He tied up the young man's limbs and dragged him directly to the bathroom. Then, he stuffed a towel into the man's mouth. In order to prevent him from escaping, Yi Qian tied the man to the toilet bowl with a towel. Finally, when he closed the bathroom door, he used the belt of his bathrobe to tie the door lock from the outside. One of the suspects is in the men's washroom in the hotel lobby, the second last seat. The other was in the bathroom of room 5015 on the 5th floor of the hotel. "I'll deal with the rest of the suspects now." Yi Qian told K7 the location of the suspect that had been taken care of. The rest of the cleanup work could be left to K7 and the others or the Tongzhou police. With that one word, he ended the call and turned to Xia Jinyuan. "The follow-up work will be handled by the Tongzhou police. Will the criminal, Mr. Charlie, also be handed over to the Tongzhou police?" For the police, this was an opportunity to perform meritorious deeds. Moreover, the Snowfield Brigade couldn't easily interfere with local affairs. Naturally, they had to ask clearly. Inform the Tongzhou police and tell them the location of the 2 suspects that have been arrested. Don't say anything else for the time being. If they need our help, it won't be too late to take action. Xia Jinyuan was also well versed in local politics. Although they had a high chance of winning, since the Tongzhou police were already deployed, they would definitely complete the task successfully. Otherwise, how would the local officials answer to the director who personally acted as the bait? As for Mr. Charlie, Xia Jinyuan pondered for a few seconds and said to Bai He, "Contact Pigeon, I need to ask the director." The director hadn't rested. When he received Xia Jinyuan's call, his serious face suddenly smiled. Yi Qian did well. This Charlie is the biggest fish in Tongzhou. Since the Tongzhou police are going to arrest him, you won't have to be involved in local affairs to avoid increasing your workload. Chapter 1463. After all, the soldiers sent from the army were all going to Guilin, not to catch criminals. Xia Jinyuan had no objections to the Director General's arrangement. That was his original intention as well. As a soldier, it was not appropriate for him to get involved in local politics. Even if he was part of the military police, he had to be clear about his position. He should not try to show off his skills in other people's areas. If that happened, not only would he not be rewarded, he would probably be dragged back to the army. The Tongzhou police had already made preparations. The members of the Snowfield Brigade chose to watch from the sidelines and watch Yi Qian take care of the criminals who wanted to set the hotel on fire. It was nighttime in the north, and the temperature dropped rapidly. Yi Qian, who was near the stairs, called one of the criminals who was guarding the hotel's engine room. She had just taken care of the criminals who were guarding the parking lot and the criminals who were guarding the back of the hotel. After taking care of 2 criminals in a row, her back was already sweating. She raised her hand to wipe the sweat off her forehead. The faint blue light from her phone illuminated Yi Qian's face, making it seem as if her face was covered with a layer of blue coldness. She had imitated the young man's voice to perfection, and it was difficult to tell if it was real or fake. Just like how she dealt with the previous criminals, she first needed to know the specific location of the target before she took action. The hotel's engine room was on the 2nd floor of the basement, and there were security guards on duty. The criminal she needed to take care of was one of the security guards on duty. Yi Qian did not walk slowly from the underground parking lot to the 2nd floor of the basement. She gently put her feet down and then lifted them up again to make sure that she did not make any sound. Walking through the murky corridor, Yi Qian quietly pushed open the heavy fire door. She saw 2 security guards sitting on a shabby sofa, smoking and chatting. Neither of the voices belonged to her target. Yi Qian retreated to the fire door and dialed another number. Not long after, she heard footsteps coming from behind the fire door. The person was walking directly towards her. Yi Qian's back was pressed against the cold wall. In the darkness, her dark eyes were like a wild beast hiding in the dark. She calmly locked the fire door. The fire door was pushed open and a tall, fat figure entered Yi Qian's line of sight. The door closed, and in the dark corridor, there was the sound of fists hitting flesh. Then, there was the sound of something heavy rolling down the stairs. Finally, there was the sound of someone struggling to break free and letting out a frightened moan. Yi Qian pulled out the man's belt and buckled it into the man's mouth. He then wrapped the belt around the man's head and locked it in place. The man could only make muffled sounds. The criminal, who was wearing a security guard uniform, also helped her. He took out the decorative belts and tied them together. Then, with another belt, he tied the criminal's legs together. Even in the dark, Yi Qian tied the criminal's hands and feet tightly together. At this moment, the tall, fat, and strong criminal was tied up in a reverse arch by Yi Qian. His chest and stomach were pressed against the cold ground. His chin was raised high, and he had no strength to struggle at all. The third one was dealt with. She takes an average of 5 minutes to deal with one. K7, who received another call from Yi Qian, raised his eyebrows slightly. There was a subtle smile on his indifferent face. He said to Bai He, "Are you looking forward to meeting her even more?" Bai He nodded. The smile on his handsome face was much deeper than K7's. "That's right. I'm looking forward to it more and more. These few people are nothing to her." Xia Jinyuan, who had been calm from the beginning to the end, smiled gently. No one knew better than him how powerful his little fox was. His little fox wanted to ascend to the throne, so it was not a big deal for her to deal with a few small fries. Chapter 1464. Xia Jinyuan waited quietly for Yi Qian to resolve the dangerous situations in the hotel one by one. He waited quietly for her to complete her mission for the night. The Major General sat alone in his office with his head lowered as he worked. Other than occasionally lifting his head to pick up a document that was placed further away, he never lifted his head or moved around. The alarm clock placed directly on the desk rang. Only then did he look up from a pile of documents, put the work in his hands aside, and raised his hand to pick up the landline receiver. At 9:30 p.m. Xia Jinyuan received a call from the Major General. The Major General only asked, "How is Yi Qian doing?" Xia Jinyuan seemed to have been waiting for the Major General to call. When he heard the Major General's call, he replied calmly, "The cleanup has been completed. The Tongzhou police are cleaning up the dangerous items in the hotel according to the criminal's statement. Yi Qian is doing very well. She took a total of 1 hour and 7 minutes to get rid of 6 criminals. At the same time, she assisted the Tongzhou police in apprehending one of the main criminals in Tongzhou. It was not a difficult task for Yi Qian to watch. The Major General, who originally had a serious expression on his face, smiled faintly. "Xiao Yi, this is the first time you have completed a mission without carrying any weapons. You have a good start. To Yi Qian, this was a mission, but to the military, this was her first time fighting alone. It was also a test. Yes, it is indeed a good start. Major General, I wonder if the military is satisfied?" Xia Jinyuan's thin lips curled up as he asked with a smile. His unfathomable black eyes gazed out of the car window. Inside the car, the neon lights were reflected, adding warmth to his cold eyes. "I think you should be very satisfied." His question and answer made the Major General laugh out loud. "It seems that you have already guessed my intentions. Not bad. Yi Jian has the whole situation under control. She has submitted an answer that has satisfied the military for the time being, and also made me feel relieved for the time being." Everything was for the time being, which meant that the test for Yi Qian had just begun. The military wanted to see if she could calmly face a one-on-one battle. They also wanted to see if she could quickly find a solution when she fell into a situation where she had no support and no clue but had to carry out a certain mission. Although the mission to rescue K7 was also a solo mission, at least the goal was clear. He knew that there were reinforcements behind him, and if there was any danger, he could immediately contact his comrades. But this time, there was no clear target, no definite information, and no idea if there would be any reinforcements. Not a single clue was given to Yi Qian, and he had to find it on his own. The Major General was actually a little nervous when he made the decision to let her carry out a mission without any clues. In addition to being daring and careful in carrying out this kind of mission, one also needed to know how to look for clues, how to control the whole situation, and how to further communicate with the criminals. At the same time, one also needed to complete the mission in secret so that one could successfully escape. Yi Qian had to think about all of this by himself. He had to do it by himself. There could not be any accidents in between. Just like this time, once she was exposed and the criminals noticed something strange, they might set the place on fire in advance and use the most extreme method to fight against the police. Xia Jinyuan sneered. It is also because you believe in her and are willing to give her a chance. If he did not believe in Little Fox, how could he let her fight alone? How could he arrange such a mission to train her? Chapter 1465. The smile on the Major General's face tightened and his eyes sharpened as he explained his plan to Xia Jinyuan. You hope that she can enter the Snowfield Brigade directly after graduation. What about me? Pigeon's team can't be led by you all the time. You need a leader. This was the reason why Yi Qian was being nurtured with all his heart. It was because she had the ability to lead the entire team. Moreover, her overall ability was above average and was comparable to that of Xia Jinyuan. When the leader recommended Yi Jian to go to the capital to protect the Director General, he was already thinking further. He immediately discussed with the military headquarters not only to let Yi Jian go to the capital to protect the Director General, but also to let her join the cleanup operation and arrange for her to act alone. At the same time, the Major General and the military had promised that Yi Qian would become a qualified Special Forces soldier within the next 4 years. She would be able to enter the Snowfield Brigade immediately. If Yi Qian wanted to become an outstanding Special Forces soldier like Xia Jinyuan and the others, she would have to train hard. Based on her outstanding performance in the past few years and her hard-working personality, it was possible for her to enter the Snowfield Brigade directly after graduation like Xia Jinyuan. Thank you for your trust in her. I can also promise you that Yi Qian will not let you or the military down. She was even willing to put aside her hatred for the time being just to become an outstanding Special Forces soldier. Xia Jinyuan completely believed in the girl he loved and would not disappoint those who had placed their hopes in her. As for himself, as her goal, it could be said that he had witnessed her growth along the way. It was so exciting and so difficult. Step by step, every step was so steady and steady. She did not take any shortcuts. How could Yi Qian not become an outstanding Special Forces soldier like this? The Major General also believed that Yi Qian would not disappoint him. After giving Xia Jinyuan a few instructions with a cold expression, he said, "The director has been very worried. Once you're done with your work, get Yi Qian to pigeon call the director to let him know that you're safe." The director was not aware of the military's arrangement for Yi Qian's test. To the director, Yi Qian staying in the Tongzhou International Hotel alone was like a live target. To the military, it was a test for Yi Qian. There was no danger at all. If a Special Forces soldier couldn't even take care of a few criminals, then he didn't deserve to be called a Special Forces soldier. He might as well go home and sleep. Yi Jian did not disappoint the Major General. She was still able to find clues when there were no clues. She subdued 6 criminals without any support throughout the process. It could be seen that her psychological quality had always been very stable. She did not panic because of this. A total of 20 barrels of gasoline, 4 packs of explosives, and 5 quilts soaked in gasoline were found. 12 lighters and 6 switchblade daggers were found on the 6 criminals. In the hotel, the Tongzhou police cleaned up the dangerous items found. A police officer said as he recorded, according to the confessions, all the items were brought into the hotel by the criminals using their position as hotel security. 25-liter barrels of gasoline, 4 packs of explosives, and 5 quilts soaked in gasoline were enough to burn down the entire hotel. It's not my fault. It's really not my fault. I don't know anything. I just came here to stay for a night. A man's terrified voice came from the room next door. He pleaded for his innocence with tears and snot. Chapter 1466. When Yi Qian, who was assisting the Tongzhou police, heard this, he raised his head and said to the police officer taking notes, "This criminal has some connections. He has an uncle who is very close to the main culprit. When I was trying to get information from him, I found out that he planned to ask his uncle to bring him to meet the committee member after setting the place on fire. The police officer did not have any doubts about the words of the person who had contributed the most tonight. Okay, I'll report it immediately. Okay, you should be done with the inventory here too. Yi Qian, who had planned to leave after handing the criminal over to the Tongzhou police, took off his filter mask. His obsidian-like eyes had a faint smile as he stared at the police officer. The hotel crisis has been resolved. I think it's time for me to leave. I'll have to trouble my police brothers from now on. The police officer who was about to pass by the next room immediately stopped in his tracks. Aren't you staying at the hotel tonight? If you want to leave now, should I go and ask the deputy commissioner first? The police officer was very young. He had just graduated from the police academy a year ago. He did not have the authority of the police officers who were searching outside. He was still a little inexperienced. Otherwise, he would not have stayed to clean up the dangerous goods. He said shyly, looking a little embarrassed. The deputy commissioner told me before he left that if you want to leave, I have to go with. As he was speaking, a few footsteps accompanied by voices came over. They walked very quickly and appeared in the room in the blink of an eye. The police officer turned around and his shy expression immediately became very serious. Commissioner Kai, Deputy Commissioner, has everything been cleaned up? Did you find any other dangerous goods? The man who spoke was about 45 years old. His face was very serious, and he had the authority of a leader. He looked at the young police officer and said, "Be careful when you do the inventory to avoid any mistakes." The police officer straightened his back and replied, "Yes, Commissioner Kai." The deputy commissioner said, "Commissioner Kai, this is Comrade Yi, who helped the Tongzhou police a lot tonight. It's all thanks to her. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to complete the search so smoothly." He smiled and introduced her to Yi Qian. "Comrade Yi, this is Commissioner Kai." Compared to the deputy commissioner whose smile made people feel comfortable, Yi Qian felt that the serious and righteous Commissioner Kai was easier to talk to. "Hello, Commissioner Kai. I'm Yi Qian, an active soldier." He didn't say anything else, not even the Director General. Previously, Yi Qian had been standing behind the male police officer, so Chief Kai didn't immediately notice her. Now that she walked out gracefully, Chief Kai's gaze immediately stopped on her face. The young girl had the temperament of a soldier. Even though she was dressed casually, one could tell that she was a soldier with just a single step. But that wasn't the main point. The main point was, when Chief Kai saw the young man's face clearly, his expression quietly changed. His cold eyes flashed slightly before he reached out his hand. "Thank you for your hard work, Comrade Yi." The young face was also a familiar face. It was just that one of them had fallen into eternal slumber, while the other had been reborn. Another face that was sealed in his memory flashed through his mind. Looking at the familiar face in front of him, Chief Kai's heart thumped like a drum. He looked around the room that was filled with the smell of gasoline. Chief Kai's gaze deepened, and he once again casually sized up Yi Qian. "Let's go outside and talk. Little Zhu will take care of everything here." Little Zhu was the male police officer who had been talking to Yi Qian just now. Yi Qian noticed that something was wrong with Chief Kai's gaze and nodded with a smile on his face. He followed Chief Kai out of the room. The deputy commissioner tactfully stayed behind and didn't follow. Chief Kai obviously had something to ask, so he didn't need to follow. Chapter 1467. As Chief Kai walked, his arms swung back and forth in his police uniform. Yi Qian was all too familiar with his steely aura. Chief Kai was a retired soldier who had been transferred to civilian work. At that thought, Yi Qian's eyes darkened. Her features were very similar to her mother's. Grandfather Zhen said that any old friend who knew her mother would know whose daughter she was once they saw her. Could it be that Chief Kai, who was a retired soldier, knew her mother? Wasn't that too much of a coincidence? But she couldn't help but suspect it. The way Chief Kai looked at her, He was indeed reminiscing about an old friend through her. Could it be her mother? Could it be that much of a coincidence? She knew too little about her mother. She knew so little that even though she suspected that her mother's death might have something to do with old Madame Yi and Sun Yaozu, she didn't know where to start investigating. For a moment, Yi Qian's calm mind became a little unstable. Even though her mind was unstable, Yi Qian was still a little expectant. At Chief Kai's signal, she sat down on the lounge chair in the hotel room. As soon as she sat down, she looked up slightly and met Chief Kai's eyes, which were filled with memories. It was getting late. She still had to go find the Director General. Even though she was expectant, she wasn't sure if Chief Kai knew her mother, so she shouldn't put too much hope into it. In just a few seconds, Yi Qian adjusted her slightly chaotic mind and calmed down. Chief Kai didn't notice the ups and downs in her emotions just now. He was still thinking about his own matters. The memories buried deep in his memories all came rushing back. If he thought that Yi Qian looked like an old friend when he first saw her, then as he thought deeper, he really felt that Yi Qian was his old friend's daughter. Otherwise, how could they be so similar? But they had received news that his old friend had passed away in an accident. Then Comrade Xiao Yi, who looked so similar to his old friend. No, he had to be steady. He would bring it up again after careful observation. The room was very quiet. When Yi Qian saw that Chief Kai didn't speak for a long time, she couldn't help but frown slightly. It was this subtle action that surprised Chief Kai even more. Even more alike. When he frowned, he looked even more like his old friend. Except for the different expression between his eyebrows, his facial features really looked like they were carved out of the same mold. Although the facial features were similar, they were not alike in spirit. The Comrade Yi in front of him had a chilly look, like a pine tree proud and unyielding snow, while his old friend had a gentle look, like a red plum blossom that had just bloomed, with a woman's tenderness between her eyebrows. Comrade Yi didn't. Her delicate and pretty face had a rigid expression, and her gaze was sharp and deep. Although there was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth, her indifferent temperament had already maintained a certain distance from others. Looking at the face that increasingly overlapped with the face of his old friend in his memory, Chief Kai's mood became a little unstable for a moment. He didn't say anything, and Yi Qian didn't say anything either. He even picked up the teapot on the square table and poured himself and Chief Kai a cup of cold water. Chief Kai's gaze moved slightly from the young face to the teacup. He sighed with nostalgia in his gentle voice. "I'm sorry. My apologies. You're too polite." Yi Qian wasn't someone who was curious about other people's private affairs. Even if he could tell that Chief Kai was reminiscing about his old friend through him, he didn't want to know. Chapter 1468. If Chief Kai's old friend was her mother, then he would definitely mention it. If not, then there was no need for her to know about other people's private affairs. Yi Qian, who was very clear in her heart, completely calmed down. Even the chief of the Tongzhou City Public Security Bureau couldn't see through her thoughts. Her polite answer, calm smile, calm face, and calm handling made Chief Kai take the cup she handed over and say, "It's rare to see someone as steady as Mount Tai." Chief Kai also didn't immediately mention that his old friend was similar to Yi Qian. The official business hadn't been resolved yet, and private matters could be discussed later. After taking a sip of cold water, Chief Kai put down the cup and looked at Yi Qian again. Seeing her drink the cold water calmly under his gaze, there was no trace of nervousness on her face, and there was no trace of restraint in her movements. Chief Kai's smile deepened, and he nodded secretly. She solved the hotel crisis with her own strength, and immediately contacted the Tongzhou City Police after the incident. She didn't have the slightest intention of claiming credit, and then immediately left to the police to deal with the follow-up matters and didn't show up again. It was rare for someone so young to be able to act so steadily. "Xiao Yi, I will truthfully write this merit in the report and submit it to the Great Hall." Xiao Yi, I will report this merit to the Great Hall. When Chief Kai talked about official business, he spoke clearly word by word, unlike the deputy chief who was deliberately vague, afraid that Yi Qian would steal the credit from the Tongzhou City Police. Although the Tongzhou City Police knew that there were criminals in the hotel, we didn't know what they were planning, nor did we know that the hotel's security guards had joined the cult. If it wasn't for your help, tonight wouldn't have gone so smoothly. I will write it in detail in the report, and I won't hide anything. If there are any commendations in the future, the Tongzhou City Police will contact you in time. It will more or less help your military career. Soldiers and police were the same. They all needed to make contributions. The more commendations they received, the more help it would be in the future. Moreover, this was her merit, and no one could take it for themselves. What belonged to her could only belong to her. The Tongzhou City Police wouldn't go so far as to steal credit from a soldier who helped them. But Yi Qian didn't need it. He smiled and said, "Chief Kai, you're too polite. This is the responsibility of a soldier. Besides, I didn't do anything else. I just caught a few criminals while I was at it." The final follow-up work was finished by the Tongzhou Police. The ones who really worked hard were the Tongzhou Police. Just like his old friend, although she was a woman, she was an upright person. She was never fond of grandiose achievements, nor did she enjoy being in the limelight. After drinking half a glass of water and chatting for 4 to 5 minutes, Chief Kai relaxed after hearing her attitude towards the matter. He leaned back in his chair and gazed deeply at Yi Qian. "Comrade Xiao Yi, I'm sorry to take the liberty of asking you a few personal questions. If you're unwilling to answer, you don't have to hold back and just say it." If he didn't get to the bottom of this, he would feel regret. Yi Qian's hands tightened around the glass of water. His expression didn't change as he smiled and said, "Please go ahead." Facing Chief Kai's deep gaze, Yi Qian knew that he was deeply missing his old friend at this moment. His originally calm heart stirred again. He thought that Chief Kai didn't plan to talk about his old friend, but he suddenly mentioned it when he was about to leave. Yi Qian's heart was filled with hope again. Chapter 1469. How great would it be if Chief Kai really knew her mother? He didn't say it immediately. He stared at her for a long time before sighing. "You look very similar to an old friend of mine with the surname Sun. Your features are very similar, but your temperament is completely different." Old friend with the surname Sun. Yi Qian's heart trembled when she heard this. This was her mother's surname. Chief Kai, Chief Kai. Her calm black eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Chief Kai without blinking and said softly, "Chief Kai, my mother's surname is also Sun." Did she really know her mother? Did Chief Kai really know her mother? Yi Qian's fingers trembled as she held the glass of water tightly. She was a little nervous. Chief Kai's eyes flashed fiercely. They both had the surname Sun. Could Yi Qian really be his old friend's daughter? If that was the case, then why did the letter they received say that his comrade's daughter had passed away in an accident? Moreover, the comrade who had specially asked around said that his daughter had indeed passed away in an accident. He also said that she was young and mischievous. On a summer afternoon, she had run out to play in the water by herself and had unfortunately fallen into a pond and drowned. Chief Kai's heart was already in turmoil. His eyes lit up as he said, "She used to be in the military." If she really was his old friend's daughter, then she should at least know about her mother's past. Yi Qian naturally knew a little, but not much. Uncle Jen didn't know much, so naturally, he didn't tell her much. But now that she had met an old friend who could possibly know her mother, Yi Qian suppressed the excitement in her heart and tried her best to answer politely. "I don't know if the old friend you're talking about is my mother. I only know that my mother was a martyr. Unfortunately, she died in the line of duty when I was 3 years old." Suppressing the excitement in her heart, Yi Qian was still a calm and self-controlled Special Forces soldier. She didn't like to show her emotions. Although her emotions were as vast as the ocean, they were also deep and unpredictable. Her mother's sacrifice was suspicious. Suddenly, an old friend who could very likely know her mother had appeared. Although it was indeed a coincidence, it was better to be cautious. Yi Qian's wandering from place to place in her previous life made her cautious and not easily trusting others. Your mother and my old friend are somewhat similar. She was indeed a soldier. 17 years ago, she died in the line of duty. Yi Jian probed carefully, and so did Chief Kai. He didn't say anything more or less, but he just happened to say something useful. Chief Kai was cautious because he had learned that the daughter of his old friend had passed away in an accident. Yi Jian, on the other hand, was suspicious and reserved because of her mother's sacrifice. She did not take the initiative to start the conversation. She waited for the other party to say something before she answered. What a coincidence! My mother also died in the line of duty 17 years ago. When she was sent back, the leaders of the military, political, and military commissions said that my mother was personally sent to the incinerator by the premier. Speaking of the past, Yi Jian couldn't help but gently close her eyes. The corners of her eyes were moist. Sometimes it wasn't a good thing to have a good memory. She remembered that day very clearly. Even though she had lived 2 lives, the memory was still so fresh. When the peach blossoms withered, the ground in the peach forest was covered in a thick layer of pink, red, and white. She was playing at home when she suddenly heard Sun Dongqing's faint cries coming from outside the peach forest. She didn't know what was going on and kept looking up. She saw 2 soldiers in military uniforms and military caps walking out of the peach forest step by step. Chapter 1470. One of the soldiers was holding a small, dark-colored box. On top of the box was a folded red national flag. Behind the 2 soldiers, there were a few other soldiers. They were surrounded by the villagers, and some aunties were sobbing. Later, she found out that they said her mother had sacrificed herself and slept in that small dark-colored box. Peach blossoms fell like rain. The sky was gray and misty, and it drizzled. It was very cold on her face, and it made her heart feel very empty. They all said her mother had sacrificed herself. Sacrifice represented death. What was death? When she was 2 or 3 years old, she experienced her father's death. She already understood what death was. When I sent her back, the willow tree by the pond had just started to sprout green, and the peach blossoms had just bloomed. I knew my mother had sacrificed herself, Yi Jian said softly. She knew that Chief Kai hoped that she would be able to answer every sentence he said. Then, she would be able to string them together and find out whether she was the daughter of his old friend or not. Chief Kai, who was leaning against the back of the chair, unconsciously sat up straight. His deep eyes became watery. All of our comrades liked to call her Red Plum. Red Plum in the army, Red Plum in the army. Is it because her name has the word shui in it? Yi Qian raised her hand to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. She knew that her heart was beating a little fast, and it felt like it was going to jump out of her throat. With every word she said, she observed Chief Kai more carefully. She didn't want to miss the slightest expression on this middle-aged man's face. She thought that she had indeed met her mother's old friend, her mother's former comrade. Chief Kai's eyes became watery, and there was nostalgia, sadness, and reminiscence of the past. Yes, her name has the word shui, like the red plum blossoms in the snow. So, her code name was Red Plum. Red plum blossoms in the snow, blooming proudly in the snow. As he spoke, his voice became hoarse. Martyr Sun Xueqing, this is my old friend, and also my former comrade. It couldn't be wrong, it couldn't be wrong. Yi Qian must be her daughter. Hong Mei, oh Hong Mei, I didn't expect your daughter to have grown up so much. She's even carrying on her mother's will. She's also donned a military uniform to serve the motherland just like you. She's become a female soldier who's not inferior to a male soldier. You in the underworld must feel gratified. Chief Kai completely believed that the girl in front of him was his old friend's daughter. His originally serious eyes became infinitely warm as he slowly talked about the past. I know that she has a daughter. My comrades in the team all know. But more than 10 years ago, we wrote a letter to ask about it. We received a reply from the town saying that Sun Xueqing's comrade's daughter died in an accident. We also sent a retired comrade to inquire about it and received the same reply. They all said that you went out to play in the water at noon in the summer and unfortunately fell into the water and died. Everyone in the same class as Hongmei believed it. We all believed that you died because you fell into the water that summer. In the end, he didn't. Hongmei's daughter was still alive, and he had met him. At this moment, Chief Kai completely believed that the young female soldier in front of him was their comrade Sun Xueqing's daughter. She didn't know that her mother's comrade had come to inquire about it. However, even if she did, she wouldn't have known that when she was young, she had struggled to survive in Sun Dongqing's hands. Ying had forced her to be timid and weak. In addition, Yi Jifan had received old Madame Ye's orders to raise her into a useless person. She didn't know anything about the outside world. Chapter 1471. I'm sorry to have made you worry. I've always lived in Shuku village and never left. When did you come to our village? 3 years after your mother's death. Some of us retired at the end of the year. We wrote a letter to the town in September and received a reply in early October. At the end of December, one of our retired comrades specially came over before returning home. Only then did we completely believe that you really died in an accident. Chief Kai let out a long sigh. Now, I don't understand what's going on. You were clearly still alive, so why did we receive a reply saying that you were in an accident? Why did our comrades also say that you were in an accident? She calculated the time. At that time, she was being bullied badly. As a village official, Yi Jifan had close ties with the Fujian town government. It was normal for him to receive a letter and reply in such a way. The strange thing was, why did her mother's comrades say the same thing? If the letter you wrote fell into Yi Jifan's hands, it would be normal for him to reply that I fell into the water and died. To be honest, sometimes I think it's a miracle that I was able to survive safely. Yu Qian said half jokingly and half seriously. But as soon as he said this, Chief Kai's face suddenly darkened. He asked in a low voice, "What's wrong? Did someone come looking for you?" At that moment Yi Qian's heart sank. Chief Kai's expression and what he said. Something was wrong. She guessed right. She really guessed right. There was something suspicious about her mother's death. No one came looking for you, but... Yi Qian lowered her head as her mind raced. She wondered if she should directly ask Chief Kai for confirmation. But could she trust him? It was the first time they met. Should she ask about the past that might have a lot to do with it? Director Kai also lowered his eyes, so he didn't see the contemplation on Yi Jian's face. He breathed a sigh of relief and was about to speak when Yi Jian's phone in her pocket beeped. Xia Jinyuan was calling. After glancing at the caller ID, Yi Qian stood up without hesitation. Chief Kai, thank you for telling me about my mother. I still have some matters to attend to, so I won't disturb your work any further. There are still many things about your mother. You. Chief Kai stood up and stared deeply at his old friend's daughter. He saw the determination in her eyes, and her gaze was even sharper than her mother's. He paused for a few seconds before saying, "If you want to know more about your mother, you can contact me at any time." It was clear that Chief Kai had hesitated when he said this. After a moment of hesitation, his eyes were filled with determination. Yi Qian, who had always been suspicious of her mother's sacrifice, felt her heart sink. She thought that she would definitely contact Chief Kai because he knew about her mother's situation. "All right, maybe one day I will really come and disturb you." Yi Qian took the phone number that Chief Kai had written on his notebook at the last minute. He glanced at it and memorized the numbers. Yi Qian bowed slightly to Chief Kai before walking away. The young female soldier left without looking back. Just like her mother that day, even though she knew it was dangerous and that she might not come back, she accepted the mission, packed her equipment, and left without looking back. Yi Qian only knew that when her mother sacrificed herself and came back, the willow trees were green and the peach blossoms had withered. She did not know that when the red plum blossoms left, the world was covered in white snow and the only red plum blossoms were blooming. Chapter 1472. The door slowly closed and the young man walked out of sight. Chief Kai slowly sat back in his chair with a serious expression on his face. Did his comrade, who had gone through thick and thin with him, lie? Hong Mei's daughter was still alive, so why did he say that the news was confirmed? What if his comrade really lied? Chief Kai's hands, which were casually placed on the armrest, slowly clenched into fists. Hong Mei's daughter was very smart. She should know something, which was why she was so careful when she answered his question. If she really knew something, who told her? What would she do next? When would she call him? Yi Qian knew that she would definitely call Chief Kai. In her previous life, she was muddle-headed and didn't realize that her mother's death was suspicious. Since she was back in this life, she would definitely investigate. Yi Jian's mind was in turmoil as she walked step by step. She was very steady and did not panic at all. The calmer she was, the harder it was for others to tell what she was thinking at this time. She would definitely call him, but not now. She's out. In the car, K7 put away his binoculars and said to Q King, who was resting with his eyes closed, "Aren't you going to get out of the car to welcome her?" The car was parked on the side of the road where they could see the hotel's revolving door. Xia Jinyuan didn't need to use binoculars. His dark gaze pierced through the cold night and the dim light to see his girl walking over calmly with her head held high and chest puffed out. Xia Jinyuan, who had no intention of getting out of the car, put his hand on the door lock and opened it. He was still using binoculars in the front passenger seat. He adjusted the focus so that he could clearly see the girl's face. However, just as he was about to take a closer look, the girl's eyes, which were originally looking straight ahead, suddenly moved. She looked straight at him with a gaze that was as sharp as a knife. He was so shocked that he quickly put down his binoculars. He turned to K7 in shock and said, "She's very sensitive. She noticed me as soon as I adjusted the focus." Why did the Major General train her so well? Why did she make the leaders miss her so much? Why did the military open the door for her? You'll know when you get to know her. K7 asked a few whys, but he did not explain himself. After that, he started the car and waited for his two comrades to return. The white crane looked outside with a pensive look in its eyes. Why? Naturally, it was because she had something extraordinary about her. She had an ability that no one could surpass. Before they even met, he was already frightened by her sensitivity. There was silence in the car. Outside the car, Yi Qian saw Xia Jinyuan walking towards him, and quickened his step. "I'm sorry for making you wait." She stopped in her tracks and spoke first. "I was delayed by something. It's a personal matter," she explained in a more serious tone. Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and gently patted her shoulder. "It's okay. Get in the car first." She had already said that she was delayed by personal matters. Based on his understanding of her, it was obvious that she would tell him about this matter and not hide it from him. If she really wanted to hide it from him, his little fox wouldn't even mention it. The hotel's greenbelt was equipped with dim street light. There were also spotlights near the roots of the shrubs. Although Yi Qian was standing in the light, her beautiful face was still hazy. Xia Jinyuan could clearly see her expression. It was filled with sadness and palpitations. Chapter 1473. What's going on? Xia Jinyuan, who had stopped with her, stared deeply at Yi Qian. His right hand, which was originally patting her shoulder, slowly lowered. Under the cover of the night, his slender fingers touched her fingertips. The touch was so cold that he directly held her hand tightly. Suppressing his doubts, he said in a soft and deep voice, "Now is not the time to think about personal matters. No matter how big the matter is, it has to be temporarily suppressed." Holding her hand tightly, the two of them walked side by side. In addition to the K7, there is also a comrade from the Snowfield Brigade, codenamed Bai He. We received orders from the military and a call from the Gillen police. Tonight we need to rush to Huzhou. We will take the 6:17 a.m. flight to Gillen tomorrow morning. His hand was very warm. The warmth from his palm and fingertips warmed Yi Qian's cold fingers. So, even if there is a personal matter, you have to put it to the back of your mind. We are soldiers. When the order is given and the mission is carried out, personal matters are insignificant compared to national affairs. I don't need to say more. You know this in your heart. Hide the sadness in your body and force back the tears in your eyes. Yi Qian, raise your chin and remember your identity. It was impossible to be comforted while carrying out a mission. Yi Qian, whose eyes were a little red, took a deep breath. Thanks to the night and the cold night wind, she did not lose her composure. Feeling the strength from him, Yi Qian gently closed her eyes and nodded. When she opened her eyes again, there was no trace of tears in her eyes. There was no sadness in her either. There was only the cold temperament of a soldier beside her. He was wise, calm, and had already unsheathed his sword. Bai He was already standing in front of the car door. As soon as Yi Jian came over, he took the initiative to shake hands with him. His movements showed the elegance and grace of someone from a famous family. "Hello, Yi Jian. I'm Bai He. I have always heard about you from my comrades. Today, I finally got to meet you." Your gaze stunned me. When he mentioned it, Yi Qian realized that the person who had secretly watched her when she walked out of the hotel was Bai He. "Hello, Bai He. I am Yi Qian. I'm sorry for making a fuss just now." When he withdrew his hand, Yi Qian had already finished sizing up the white crane. He could not stop a thought from emerging in his mind. Why were the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade like beauty pageants? Every one of them was so handsome. Using the words of 10 years later to describe them, why are they all so good-looking? Every one of them was not only good-looking, but their figures were also 1 in a million. They were all tall and straight like pine trees and slender like green bamboos. As for their figures, needless to say, they had broad shoulders, narrow waists, and long legs. Once they were in uniform, they could attract a lot of attention just by looking at their figures. Yi Qian suddenly rejoiced that he had a firm state of mind. He did not have too much desire for men, nor did he have a crush on them. Otherwise, when faced with such a group of good-looking and well-built male soldiers, he would really only care about looking at men every day. After sizing him up, Yi Qian calmly retracted his gaze, not at all attracted by Bai He's handsome face. He stood tall and straight like a pine tree, exuding an inviolable military aura. When Bai He saw this, she felt a chill in her heart. She also had a better impression of Yi Qian. To be able to become comrades with such an outstanding female soldier filled her with joy. Xia Jinyuan, who was standing beside her, opened the car door and said to Yi Qian, "Let's talk in the car." Bai He smiled at Yi Qian without any sense of distance, and got into the car first. At the same time, she did not forget to quickly say to K7, "Very good." Chapter 1474. How could he say, "not bad," after just meeting him? The K7 glanced at him. When he heard the sound of the door closing behind him, he released the brakes and stepped on the accelerator. The car with good performance immediately sped forward a few meters. Now that the matter at Tongzhou International Hotel was settled, he had to be careful with the next important mission. In the car, Yi Qian first contacted the pigeon and reported to the director that he was safe. Then, he discussed the next mission with Xia Jinyuan and the other two. Your mission is to find a few police officers who were sacrificed and make sure that they can come back in one piece. Xia Jinyuan first discussed Yi Qian's personal mission because she would be the first to sneak into the village. There's a young girl in the village called Fu Hui who will help you secretly. You can stay at her house tonight. Fu Hui was the only high school student in the mountain village. Her parents used to be honest farmers, but they joined a cult and did a few things that made her feel guilty. In order to let her parents know that they were wrong, Fu Hui chose to report them. Her report came at the right time and too suddenly. The police in Yuyang City also knew that the higher-ups were secretly investigating the exact location of the cult's headquarters, so they secretly sent people to investigate. Unexpectedly, the people they sent never returned. This alerted the Great Hall and the highest leaders. The organization's commissioner appointed Director Min as the main person in charge and launched a nationwide operation to crack down on the cult. In the next few months, the number of people arrested was not in the unit of people, but in the unit of hundreds. Director Min used himself as bait during the celebration, and in less than 2 days, he caught a group of criminals with a certain status in the cult. Among them, the foreign agent, Mr. Charlie, was the most important. Through Mr. Charlie's confession, they learned that the big committee member intended to escape abroad because of the tense situation in the country. Charlie was in charge of his departure. That was why Xia Jinyuan and the others drove overnight to Huzhou to capture the big committee member in a mountain village in Yuyang City. This is the phone of the foreign criminal, Charlie, and his voice. Listen to it first. Xia Jinyuan handed a mobile phone and a recording to Yi Qian. During this period of time, you need to disguise yourself as Charlie and contact the committee member at all times. Keep him in the village and tell him that the procedures for going abroad are in progress. He looked at Yi Qian from the rearview mirror. Ventriloquism. Yi Qian knew ventriloquism. It was said that she could imitate anyone's voice. It was so miraculous that they found it hard to believe. Ventriloquism originated in ancient times, imitating the sounds of animals to swindle prey for food. During the Warring States period, in the story Menchong Junyi Breaks Through Hanggu Pass, Crowing Cock and Stealing Dog, was the earliest military application of ventriloquism. From the Song dynasty to the Republic of China, ventriloquism flourished on the side of Hanghai. However, most of them were imitating the sounds of animals. It was rare to see them imitating human speech. In the mirror, he saw Yi Qian turn on the recording pen. Charlie's voice came from the car. Yi Qian's beautiful brows were slightly furrowed as she listened attentively. Her lips were also moving, but the movement was not big. If one did not look closely, one would not be able to tell. After listening to it twice, Yi Qian turned off the recording pen. Let me try it. Listen and see if it sounds similar. No. I don't know much about this. Moreover, I'm not from your country. You don't have the right to arrest me. D*eminent, let go of me. I want to see my lawyer. His back stiffened when he heard the voice. Chapter 1475. If he did not know who was sitting behind him, he would have thought that he was possessed in the middle of the night. Similar, too similar, no, not similar, it should be exactly the same. How could he imitate so well? Ventriloquism, a consummate skill that no one could compare to, and a consummate skill that no one could learn. It could be said that Yi Qian had shocked Bai He with his first move. It also made him understand why the military valued Yi Qian so much that he would be the first to go on a mission. It was too shocking. Even if such a talent was average in other aspects, just this consummate skill alone would make him useful to the military. Moreover, Yi Qian was an all-round talent. If the military did not discover him, it would be a loss for the military. For a moment, Bai He could not calm down. He had been conquered by Yi Qian for the first time they met. In the end, Xia Jinyuan pointed out, "Speak faster and with a higher tone, with a bit of arrogance. Also, Charlie likes to order people around, so he is very forceful when he speaks. You don't have to be too gentle when you are trying to calm down the main criminal. Okay, I'll try again. Yi Qian nodded and stopped repeating what Charlie had said in the recording pen. Instead, he spoke as if he was chatting. At this moment, Bai He could feel sweat forming on his back. Even K7's palms, which were holding the steering wheel, were wet. K7 had never heard of Yi Qian's ability to imitate others. The two people in the front row were stunned when they heard this. Hearing another person's voice from the mouth of someone they were familiar with, they would never believe it if they didn't see it with their own eyes. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, they still found it unbelievable. Xia Jinyuan's talent and language was not inferior to Yi Qian's. His expression did not change much as he gave a few pointers. After about 10 minutes, he nodded. That's about it. It shouldn't be a problem to communicate over the phone. Then he asked Bai He, "Did you have any advice?" No, not at all. Bai He quickly answered and turned around to face Yi Qian. He gave him a thumbs up. I can only admire you for this. This skill was amazing. Xia Jinyuan knew exactly what his comrade was thinking. He was as shocked as he was. Back then, he had suddenly heard a man's voice come out of the mouth of the seemingly delicate little girl beside him. Moreover, the voice was exactly the same as the voice of the criminal they were trying to subdue. Fortunately, he was hiding in the dark and didn't let her see the loss of self-control on his face. Yi Qian pursed her lips and smiled. My voice is wider than others, so it'll be easier for me to learn this. Other than the elderly and children, she had no problems with the rest. In her previous life, this was one of her escape treasures. One person could play several roles in a room and scare away the people sent by Yi Ying and Yi Zhifan many times. I want to learn from you. Bai He subconsciously finished her sentence, but halfway through, he realized that he needed to consider his words carefully. After a few seconds of pause, Bai He continued, It's not easy to learn from you. In fact, there aren't many people in the country who can do what you did. Yi Qian thought about it and agreed. In her previous life, she had learned this skill by accident. When she discovered that she had talent in this area, she was also shocked. Chapter 1476. It's a little difficult, but if everyone knew how to do it, I wouldn't have to do it, she said teasingly. Her eyes curved into crescents, and the smile in her spirited black eyes rippled like a pool of water. Her words made the three of them laugh. K7 said calmly, I know you're good at shooting, but I didn't know you could do this kind of amazing ventriloquism. It seemed like the taciturn K7 would talk more when he was with Yi Qian. Xia Jinyuan was already used to it, but Bai He, who didn't know, was surprised. K7, did something good happen to you today? You said 10 sentences in half an hour, and each sentence was more than 5 words long. He will be more gentlemanly in front of Yi Qian. Xia Jinyuan answered for his comrade. Not only him, but G3 as well. As long as they are in front of Yi Qian, they will talk a lot. The car had already left Tongzhou City, and the next intersection was the highway to Huzhou. K7, who didn't need a GPS, seemed to be very familiar with Tongzhou, and the car made several turns before it reached the highway. As he entered the highway, he replied calmly, What do a bunch of men have to say? Don't you know that the opposite sex attracts the opposite sex? Looks like I have to talk to the political commissar and tell him that K7's thinking is a little empty, and he needs to communicate more with the female soldiers. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows, and his thin lips curved into a faint smile. He was relaxed and gentle. We're a bunch of men, and we're making K7 suffer. K7 actually continued in a serious tone, You can also request the military to find a few more female soldiers who are as good as Yi Qian. With both men and women working together, it won't be tiring. That's impressive, you even know that. Bai He was even more surprised. Who was K7? He was a man who was more boring than a monk. In the military, other than training, going to the laboratory, and reading, he had no other hobbies. His life was as dull as a cup of water. In the military, there was a saying that described K7, cut off the roots of love, and live in seclusion in the Zhongnan Mountains. It meant that K7's coldness was so cold that it reached his soul. Q King was cold too, but his coldness was different from K7's. K7's coldness was as if he had cut off all emotions and desires. How could he joke around with such a person? He even joked about, like repel, like opposites attract. They had been comrades for 6 years now, and this was the first time he heard K7 say something that sounded so mundane. I think everyone will be happy to have a few more comrades like Yi Jian. K7 didn't care about how shocked his comrades were. He just said what he wanted to say. He was just speaking the truth. Xia Jinyuan, who had always been open-minded, felt that K7's words made sense. However, if he were to use his little fox as a standard, Xia Jinyuan felt that it would be difficult for the military to make such a suggestion. His slender body leaned forward slightly, and his deep and magnetic voice was heard. I can send you to the arts department, but we have to find a few female soldiers like Yi Qian. We shouldn't make things difficult for the military. K7 laughed. He probably didn't laugh often, so the sound of his laughter was a little scary. It was mysterious and had a deeper meaning. Bai He, who was watching from the side, also laughed. He had seen how capable Yi Qian was, and that alone was enough to make him feel shocked. Chapter 1477. Just as Q King had said, finding a few female soldiers like her was indeed difficult for the military. His comrade's meaningful laughter made Xia Jinyuan smile. Indeed, his little fox was unique, his girl was unique, and he and their comrade Yi Qian were unique. Major Xia Jinyuan, who could portray elegance and perfection at any time, changed his sitting position. His deep eyes gazed gently at Yi Qian. He looked at the girl he loved deeply, as if he wanted to carve her into his heart. Even if he closed his eyes, she was the only one in his eyes. Yi Qian felt a little uncomfortable under his gaze. Why does he keep staring at me? In the past, when he saw that I was uncomfortable, he would comfort me. After all, I've lived 2 lives and have never come into contact with people like him. I'll be fine once I get used to it. Today, Yi Qian realized that she had been too naive. She had underestimated the elegant yet dangerous man in front of her. Time passed, and Xia Jinyuan became more mature with each passing day. His aura was even stronger than before. Looking into his eyes, she really couldn't take it. He was too gentle, so gentle that it was as if there was electricity in his eyes. When she looked into his eyes, the electricity would flow into her heart and make her breath go haywire. Receiving her glare, Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows elegantly. His incomparably elegant appearance contained a scoundrel that Yi Qian couldn't handle. She had to find an opportunity to tell him that she really wasn't used to flirting with him in front of her comrades. It was too awkward. It was fine if K7 knew about their relationship, but Bai He didn't. Her comrades who could enter the Snowfield Brigade were all meticulous people. If she wasn't careful, they would notice something. If Bai He noticed that something was wrong, she would definitely jump out of the car and leave. Yi Qian immediately glared at the comrade in front of her when he wasn't paying attention. She used her eyes to tell him, "If you keep looking, I'll ignore you." Cough, cough, cough. Understanding the warning in his girlfriend's eyes, Xia Jinyuan suddenly coughed. If he kept looking, she would ignore him? Was that a warning? All he saw was her cuteness. Xia Jinyuan, who always knew when to stop, did not continue watching. He did not want his girl to feel awkward and unnatural in front of his comrades. He retracted his gaze and coughed with his fist against his thin lips. His dark and cold eyes were filled with a smile. She didn't want to look anymore. If she did, the shy little fox's face would turn red. He really didn't know about the relationship between Q King and Yi Qian, and he didn't think in that direction. From K7's casual tone, he could tell that K7 really treated Yi Qian as a comrade that he could confide in. She couldn't help but take another look at Yi Qian through the rearview mirror. The interior of the car was a little dark, so he couldn't see her facial features clearly. However, when his gaze landed on her, he could feel that her eyes had the same spirit as his. They had the same faith and the same goal. After taking another look and sizing her up, he understood why his comrades would praise her endlessly every time they returned from a mission together. It could be said that the entire Snowfield Brigade knew about Yi Qian, and those who had never seen Yi Qian before were just as curious about her as he was. Every time Xia Jinyuan returned, there would always be a few comrades who would come over to ask about Yi Qian. Some of them would even ask their captain when he would bring Yi Qian to their brigade, or when they would become comrades who would fight together and go to the battlefield together. Chapter 1478. Through the rearview mirror. He looked at Yi Qian with a kind gaze. When he saw Yi Qian smiling back at him in the mirror, he couldn't help but smile as well. He thought to himself, just like K7 and the others, I'm looking forward to her arrival. I'm looking forward to her becoming my comrade. He finally understood why all the comrades in arms who had fought alongside Yi Qian looked forward to fighting alongside her again. Her eyes, her expression, and the way she spoke made you feel safe from the bottom of your heart. It was so safe that you could trust her with your back when you were on the battlefield. It was still some time before they left for Huzhou. Even though the four of them were chatting until they were relaxed, they didn't continue chatting. They needed to maintain a certain amount of energy to deal with the upcoming danger. The four of them took turns driving. Each of them only needed to drive for 3 hours. Xia Jinyuan and the others didn't mention that Yi Qian didn't need to drive and could rest all the time. They were comrades in arms who fought together. They could share joys and sorrows together. Since she was responsible for driving for 3 hours, it also meant that she could fight alongside them without any special arrangements. The night deepened. Yi Qian, who was in charge of driving the car in the morning, had already fallen asleep. Her breathing was long and steady, and there was even a sweet smile on her delicate face. She was completely relaxed as she fell into a deep sleep. He in the front seat had also fallen asleep. Major Xia, who was waiting for his girlfriend to sleep first, saw the car enter the tunnel. He quietly raised his hand. When the car exited the tunnel, Yi Qian, who had been resting his head on the window, had already fallen asleep on his shoulder. After finishing his task, Major Xia closed his eyes in satisfaction. The three of them fell asleep. However, someone rushed into the elevator with the cool night breeze and pressed the floor number. Yu Jifan's face was as gloomy as a dark cloud. What's the matter in the middle of the night? Why do you have to rush over now? Can't you wait until tomorrow? What urgent matter could Yi Zhixiang and her husband have? It's most likely related to that old hag again. Sun Dongqing's mouth didn't stop nagging from the moment they arrived at the hotel. Listen carefully. If she wants me to take care of that old hag, there's no way. You'd better be alert. Don't be soft-hearted when she cries and throws a tantrum. You treat her as your sister, but does she treat you as her brother? Never. When she was young, she always looked forward to the two of us fighting. Didn't she do enough to drive a wedge between us? Haven't you wronged me a lot? The enmity between her and me is huge, and I won't be able to resolve it in this lifetime. She was still talking relentlessly and did not notice that Yi Zhifan's gloomy face was already filled with ruthlessness. Ying saw this and her heart thumped. She secretly tugged at her mother and whispered, "Mom, aren't you tired after talking for so long?" He didn't stop at all from his house to the hotel. "Since we're already here, do we have to go back now? Dad knows what's going on. Can you stop saying that?" His voice became lower and lower. "Can't you see that Dad is in a bad mood now? Can you at least be considerate of your father? Sun Dongqing had always listened to her daughter's words. When she heard her daughter's words, she snorted and stopped nagging. Yu Jifan didn't want to communicate with his wife anymore. There was no point in talking to her. Other than arguing and throwing tantrums, he couldn't think of anything else she could do. She was smart once in a while, but she was stupid afterward. Chapter 1479. When they arrived at Yi Zhixiang's room, Ying knocked on the door. "Auntie, it's me, Ying. Dad, Mom, and I are here to see you." As soon as she finished speaking, the locked door of the hotel room opened. Yi Zhixiang stood in front of the family of three, wearing a black trench coat. Her face was ashen. Ever since she confirmed that the person standing on the city gate tower was Yi Qian, she could not relax for even a second. Looking at Yu Jifan, her lips trembled as she said, "Brother, something big happened." Her expression was so terrible that even Sun Dongqing, who had wanted to show off her power, was shocked. What happened? Her heart fluttered for a moment due to all the fuss. The room was filled with the smell of cigarette. Sun Yaozu, who had smoked half a pack of cigarettes, stood up. His expression was also terrible, but when he spoke, his fierceness did not change. "Something troublesome has happened. Second brother, we have to discuss how to solve it. Look at the TV. I have to start from there." Sun Dongqing glanced at it and looked away. She rolled her eyes and said sarcastically, "Didn't you just go to the capital for a vacation? Do you still need to show off to us? Do you think I haven't been there before?" She did not look carefully, but Ying saw it. She, who had been standing there with a smile, turned pale in an instant. Her finger trembled as she pointed at the figure she was most familiar with. It was also the figure she hated the most. "Dad, Yi Qian, look. That's Yi Qian." Yi Zhifan saw it only a few steps later than his daughter. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the figure on the TV. This. After being reminded, Sun Dongqing finally saw Yi Qian. She looked at him in disbelief and stuttered, This, isn't this the city gate tower? Why is she standing with the leader?" Everyone wanted to know. Everyone wanted to know why Yi Qian was standing with the leader of the country. Yi Ying, who was leaning against the bed, fell onto the bed. The photo stimulated her so much that she was in a daze. She mumbled, "How is this possible? How is that possible? No way, no way, no way." Sun Yaozu saw that the mother and daughter did not believe him no matter what. They only knew how to repeat bullshit like, "I don't know how to." He cursed in his heart. "Motherf *cur, I didn't ask you to come here to listen to bullshit. Nising, your aunt recorded it with a DV camera. You don't believe me? Do you think I'm trying to scare you? Do you want to watch the recording? Come here and watch." He pointed at the DV camera on the coffee table, glanced at Ying, and said to Yi Zhifan, "Brother Tingrui, you decide what to do. This damned girl is attending the celebration with the leaders of the country, and she's even standing on top of the city gate tower. I told you to raise her into a useless person, but you *king sent her to the country's leaders with your own hands. Second brother, if you don't give me an explanation for this, I won't let you off." Sun Dongqing didn't think about how to deal with the aftermath. She rushed over and picked up the DV machine on the coffee table. Her hands trembled as she pressed the buttons. "How do I do it? What are you going to do with this lousy thing? I want to watch the video, I want to watch the video." She was panicking, she was really panicking. On the other side, Ying got up from the bed and stumbled over. Her body was trembling. "Mom, give it to me, show it to me, I want to see it. I want to see it." Chapter 1480. Yi Ying's reaction was bigger than anyone else's. After snatching the DV camera, the more anxious she was, the more she didn't know how to use it. Her lips trembled as she pressed down hard on the function button, so hard that her fingertips turned white. How could this be? How could this be? She had just accepted that Yi Qian had gone further than her and stood higher than her. She had finally adjusted her mindset. Why did something unacceptable happen again? Why? Yi Qian was better than her now. She had to accept it. As long as she worked hard, she would surpass her one day. She would return to the past and Yi Qian would only be able to look up to her. But in the end? Yi Ying's face was not only pale, but she also looked crazy. She was in a state of confusion and was not normal at all. After pressing the buttons for a long time and not seeing the video she wanted, Yi Ying suddenly raised her head and shouted at Yi Zhixiang, "What rubbish! What rubbish did you buy? You call yourself a college student. You don't even know how to use a small video recorder." Yi Zhixiang glanced at Yi Ying with disdain. She did not act like an elder and said sarcastically, "No wonder you can't compare to Yi Qian in everything. You're just stupid." Tch, shut up. Sun Dongqing, who was defending her daughter, immediately jumped out and shouted back, "You shameless Tch. Ying calls you auntie. Tch like you ba. You don't deserve it." Yi Zhixiang could not take this kind of insult. Hearing this, she was so angry that she screamed and rushed over like a shrew. "Sun Dongqing, you Tch, how dare you insult me? I'm going to tear your rotten mouth apart." She pounced on Sun Dongqing and began to fight. She scratched Sun Dongqing's face with her hands and kicked Sun Dongqing. Sun Dongqing, who did not expect her to attack, did not react in time and suffered a few losses. "Insult you? Not only am I going to insult you, I'm going to hit you." Yi Zhixiang, who had the upper hand, cursed. She did not learn old Madame Ye's cleverness, but she learned how to insult and step on people's sore spots. "You're so stupid. No wonder you gave birth to a stupid thing like Yi Ying. You're not as good as Yi Qian, but you're so full of yourself. You want to compare yourself to Yi Qian? You won't even have a chance in your next life." Sun Yaozu took a look and said to Yi Zhifan gloomily, "Second brother, you don't care about second sister-in-law? She's the wife of a provincial official after all. Why is she acting like a shrew?" As he spoke, he had no intention of stepping out to mediate the fight. Zhixiang needs to be taught a lesson. Mom doesn't have the energy right now, so let her sister-in-law teach her a lesson. Yi Zhifan didn't intend to stop the fight. Sun Dongqing had always been good at fighting. No one expected Yi Ying's expression to be so crazy. Yi Zhixiang had stepped on her sore spot. Her last shred of rationality snapped when Yi Zhixiang said, "You want to compare yourself with Yi Qian? You won't even have a chance in your next life." He finally collapsed. Her eyes were bloodshot and her facial features were twisted. She looked around the room with a ferocious expression. When the four adults weren't paying attention, she picked up 2 teacups and approached Yi Zhixiang. Just as Yi Zhifan thought, Sun Dongqing wouldn't let herself be at a disadvantage when it came to fighting. She pressed Yi Zhixiang to the ground and rode on her like a horse. She lectured Yi Zhixiang fiercely, "You want to fight with me? Why don't you open your eyes and see who I am? You dare to insult Ying. Your mouth should be torn apart." Yi Zhixiang wasn't someone to be trifled with. As long as she could move her hands, she could hit back. She deserves to be stepped on by Yi Qian. She's as stupid as her mother. Yi Zhixiang, whose forehead was hit, instinctively covered her face and yelled, "Murder! Murder!" Chapter 1481. With 2 porcelain cups in her hands, Yi Ying smashed them on Yi Zhixiang's head, face, and the corner of her mouth. She did not say a word. She just kept smashing them mechanically. Those who said she was not as good as Yi Qian deserved to die. Those who said she was not as good as Yi Qian deserved to be beaten up. Those who dared to say that about her deserved to die and be beaten up. Sun Dongqing was scared out of her wits. She was shocked by Yi Ying's cruel and merciless behavior. She could only watch as her daughter smashed them again and again until she could not react. Not only was she scared out of her wits, but even the fierce Sun Yaozu was scared out of his wits. Who would have thought that a little girl could be so cruel? She was smashing a porcelain cup on Yi Zhixiang's head. She was going to kill her. Everyone in the room was scared out of their wits by the scene in front of them. Everything happened so suddenly that no one was prepared for it. Because it happened so suddenly, there was no way to prepare in advance or prepare for it. Even Yi Zhifan's mind went blank for a few seconds. Yi Ying. Yi Zhifan, who was the first to react, rushed over and grabbed Yi Ying's shoulders with his arms. He forcefully dragged Yi Ying back, causing her to fall to the ground. Yi Ying, who was in a frenzy, could not take it anymore. "I'm going to kill her! I'm going to kill her! Let go of me! Let go of me!" She struggled to get up from the thick carpet. She waved the blood-stained porcelain cups in her hands. Her eyes were bloodshot as if she was possessed. "I'm going to kill her! I'm going to kill her!" Yi Zhifan could not control her anymore. The back of his hand was also smashed. He grabbed Yi Ying and yelled at Sun Yaozu, "What the F***ck are you doing? Take the cups away from her." Then he said to Sun Dongqing, "Call 120. Yi Zhixiang screamed in pain. She covered her face with her hands and blood flowed through the gaps between her fingers. The carpet was soaked in blood. If anything were to happen to Yi Zhixiang today, his daughter would be ruined. Completely ruined. Sun Dongqing, who got off Yi Zhixiang, scrambled to find her handbag and pulled out the 120 emergency number. Sun Yaozu also reacted. He rushed up and snatched the cups from Yi Ying's hands. He kicked Yi Ying's chest. F***ck. I didn't expect her to be so cruel. His wife was beaten. He did not have much affection for his wife. Yi Zhifan didn't have time to stop her. He could only watch as his daughter was kicked on the spot. Her eyes turned white and she fainted for a moment. Instead, he heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Ying's screams could not be heard in the noisy room. Only Yi Zhixiang's screams could be heard. Sun Dongqing looked at the blood flowing through the gaps between Yi Zhixiang's fingers. Her heart raced and she panicked. "Take our daughter away, quick!" Yi Zhifan was also panicking, but he knew that he had to clean up the mess. He needed to take his daughter away as soon as possible and not let the medical staff see her. "Take your and your daughter's passports and go straight to the airport. Call me as soon as you buy the tickets to any city." Sun Yaozu would not let Yi Zhixiang off so easily. He had to send his daughter away before he could react. Sun Dongqing, who was out of her wits, could only listen to her husband's instructions. With her hair disheveled, she folded her handbag and carried her daughter who had fainted. She really did carry Yi Ying, who was at least 165 centimeters tall and weighed around 94 kilograms, and left the hotel quickly. Chapter 1482. They were originally here because of Yi Qian, but in the end it ended with her in the hospital. Her nose was broken, and there were several serious injuries on her head, forehead, and chin that required stitches. The bones on the back of her hand were cracked. When the results came out, Yi Zhifan's hand trembled as he held the report. "This is going to be hard to explain. Ying is in big trouble," he muttered to himself. She gave Sun Yaozu a handle on her. "Trouble is coming." Yi Zhifan sat down tiredly. He didn't move for a long time, so he closed his eyes and sat there quietly like a statue. Yi Qian, who he originally wanted to raise as a good-for-nothing, became an important person. He accompanied the country's leaders to the city gate tower to watch the grand celebration. His daughter, who he had painstakingly raised to become a phoenix, became a runaway and accomplished nothing. He couldn't understand how things got to this point. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. He wanted to ask Yi Qian. He really wanted to ask Yi Qian what happened on the second day of junior high. How did she suddenly wake up? How did she suddenly know how to work hard? She worked hard and was in the limelight, but she made others feel uneasy. The hornless dragon jade pendant, Yi Xinfan, Sun Xueqing. Yi Jifan thought about the past. In the end, he covered his face with both hands and buried his head. His straight back also bent down. Yi Qian, who was thousands of miles away, didn't know about Yi Jifan's thoughts. She was still sleeping soundly on Xia Jinyuan's shoulder. She didn't even realize that K7 and Bai He had stopped to change shift. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Xia Jinyuan gently supported Yi Qian's shoulder. His movements were slow and gentle as he helped her lean against the car window again. He said to Bai He, who was sitting in the back, "Let her rest against the car window. She can change her pillow from left to right. She won't get a stiff neck." Bai He, who didn't know what was going on, nodded and said, "I'll adjust her position." K7's eyelashes fluttered slightly. J5 and V7 always said that Q King was shameless. He really was shameless. Yi Qian, who was leaning against the car window, found it funny. He really knew how to find excuses. At 5 in the morning, Yi Qian prepared to switch shifts with Xia Jinyuan. She drove all the way to Huzhou Airport to catch the earliest flight to Yuyang. The flight tickets had already been booked, and the four of them boarded the plane at 7:15 a.m. News came from the Pigeon that the Director General would also be taking a plane to Guilin. After a night of interrogation, they managed to pry out a lot of clues from Charlie, as well as the crimes that were not discovered. The Director General was furious. The Pigeon's interrogation skills have improved again. Xia Jinyuan, who knew the result, said to Bai He with a smile, "How dare you say you can't take the scare? You didn't even use your ultimate move, and you already confessed everything." Bai He thought of the Pigeon's interrogation methods and sneered. Everyone has their own specialization. She's a psychology doctoral student after all. There were many talents in the Snowfield Brigade, and any one of them was much better than the average person. Every one of them had several titles. Yi Qian, who was sitting in the middle, had a tranquil smile on her face. She quietly watched the two of them talking in low voices. Her comrades were so powerful, so how could she fall behind? When you're with experts, you'll wholeheartedly chase after their footsteps and learn from them in order to motivate yourself and allow yourself to ceaselessly improve and grow. This was the principle of one is marked by the company one keep. The plane landed at 10:30 a.m. Yi Qian sat in a shabby minibus and headed to a small village deep in the mountains. It was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The minibus was severely overloaded. Yi Qian, who was sitting at the back, opened the window to let the fresh air blow away the stuffy atmosphere in the minibus. Her gaze would occasionally linger on the woman in front of her, and then she would gently move away. This was the target she was keeping a close eye on. Chapter 1483. Yi Qian glanced at her discreetly, then calmly retracted his gaze. She lowered her head and took out a small silver phone from her pocket. The signal in the mountains was not very good. Before they set off, Captain Xia and the others had thought of this problem, so Bai He gave her a small device the size of a palm. It was specially designed to receive signals. Once they entered the mountains, they only needed to turn it on to receive signals. Her fingers lazily played with the phone's keyboard. The d-d-d-d sounds of typing could be heard from time to time, conveying the message that she was bored and irritated. Sitting next to Yi Qian was a young man who had returned to the village from working. He was a little reserved and did not dare to lean completely against the seat. Every time his gaze drifted to the beautiful and young girl beside him, he seemed to be even more nervous. After a few times, Yi Qian felt bad for him. After playing with the phone for a while, Yi Qian lowered his eyes to cover his flickering eyes. Then, he casually put the phone into his pocket and closed his eyes with a heavy heart expression. The target that Yi Qian had targeted secretly watched Yi Qian many times. She sized up Yi Qian's attire and observed Yi Qian's actions and expressions. In the end, as if she had confirmed something, her hands with bright red fingernails opened her exquisite handbag. She fumbled in the bag with one hand for a while before retracting her hand. Hold on tight, hold on tight. In front, the driver loudly reminded the passengers to hold on tight to prevent them from falling when the car made a sharp turn. As the car began to turn, the people in the car fell in one direction, and then in the opposite direction. After 2 consecutive left and right turns, the passengers standing in the car swayed back and forth like roly-poly toys. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, almost 2 hours before Yi Qian boarded the car. Some people wanted to board the car midway. They probably did not want to stand in front, so they kept squeezing to the back. The passengers who were squeezed said, "Why are you squeezing? There are no seats in the back. I like to stand in the back. What can you do to me?" The one who got on the bus was a sloppily dressed man. He used the simplest and crudest language to reply to the passengers who had insulted him. Someone whispered, "Don't mess with him. He's a hooligan in this area. He usually makes a living by stopping cars from other places. If he sleeps on the road without paying, he won't get up. His villagers call him Old Rascal." Most people wouldn't provoke this kind of person for fear of getting into trouble. The man nicknamed Old Rascal was not angry. Instead, he felt proud. He squeezed to the back of the crowd and exchanged glances with the woman Yi Qian was staring at. He saw that the woman was glancing in Yi Qian's direction. Old Rascal followed her gaze and looked over. When he saw Yi Qian, his yellow eyes widened. Indeed, a good one had arrived. Sister Li's taste was indeed high. The two of them exchanged silent glances. Then the old rascal walked over to the young man sitting with Yi Qian and said, "Stand up, I want to sit here." His voice was just like his nickname, Rascal and Barbaric. "I'll count to 3. If you don't stand up, I'll beat you up." The young man was naturally unwilling, but when he saw Old Rascal suddenly pull out a knife from his pocket, his expression changed. He lowered his head and hugged his old backpack tightly. He silently stood up. Yi Qian did not open her eyes. As the car swayed, her body swayed as well. She maintained her balance and did not move left or right. Chapter 1484. Little girl, it's so tiring for you to sit like this. Come, lean on my shoulder. I guarantee you'll be comfortable. Less than 2 minutes after they sat down, the sloppily dressed old rascal began to speak rudely. "Don't be shy. Don't you think it's right to rely on your friends when you're outside?" After he finished speaking, he reached out to grab Yi Qian's shoulder. His action made Yi Qian's eyes turn cold. She opened her eyes and stared at him like a newborn calf without a trace of fear. "You'd better get your dirty hands off me. Otherwise, I'll call the police." After getting into the car, this person made eye contact with his target. They were going to put on a show. Yi Qian knew very well what was going on. She pulled a long face and stared coldly at the man who wanted to touch her. She needed to enter the village to meet Fu Hui. After the police investigation, the only person who could reassure the committee member was his mistress, who had been with him for 6 years, Li Yi. The woman's name was Li Yi. She was the mistress of the main culprit of the evil cult, the committee member. At the beginning of every month, she would rush from the city to the mountains and tell the committee member everything that happened in the city. The man who wanted to touch her was definitely someone that Li Yi had deliberately called up. Little girls from the city are different. They like to call the police. The old rascal didn't dare to take her hand. Sister Li was staring at him. He had the intention, but he didn't have the guts. He only put his hand on the back of Yi Qian's seat. He licked his face and smiled wretchedly. "Little girl, we're too far away from the police. They can't do anything about it. Besides, I'm worried that you won't be able to sleep well because of the shaky ride. I'm lending you my shoulder. I'm just being nice." Normally, Yi Qian would have beaten him up without a word. But now, she had to endure it and pretend to be afraid. Faced with the old rascal's harassment, Yi Qian pursed her lips and looked around. She needed to confirm if there were any of Li Yi's accomplices in the car, in case something went wrong later. A few passengers who made eye contact with Yi Qian turned their heads away and didn't look at her anymore. They misunderstood that the girl who was being pestered by the old rascal was asking them for help. Li Yi also misunderstood, but this was the kind of misunderstanding she wanted. "Big brother, I'll switch places with you." She got up and walked over. At the same time, she reached into her bag and pulled out $200 bills. "This is my sister. She's visiting my relatives with me." Just now, she was a little awkward and was a little unhappy. "I'm sorry, big brother, can we exchange seats with you?" Li Yi, who was wearing heavy makeup, was 36 years old. Her facial features were delicate and pretty, and she was very recognizable. He was wearing a black undershirt, a black knee-length leather jacket, a red scarf around his neck, a pair of black skinny jeans, and a pair of mid-length leather boots. Among the group of plainly dressed villagers, he looked particularly Western. In the words of the villagers, one could tell at a glance that he was a city dweller. She took out the money and acted as if she was trying to avoid a disaster. Everyone on the bus thought that she was really Yi Qian's older sister. The old rascal didn't dare to take the money at first, but Li Yi forced the money into his hands. Only then did he take it with a smile. While playing with the knife, he deliberately said, "Why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so earlier, we wouldn't have had to be a good person." After taking the money, he immediately got up and asked the driver to stop the bus and let him out. Once he took the money, there was no need to give it back. Even if it was Sister Li's money, he still took it. It was normal for him to collect some fees for doing things. Chapter 1485. As soon as he got out of the car, the atmosphere in the car was much more relaxed. Li Yi sat down and said to Yi Qian earnestly, "Sister, you have to be careful when you go out alone. Now that the world has changed, there are too many bad people. How can a girl like you be so bold? I see that you're dressed well and even use a mobile phone. Which village are you going to visit?" In addition to being the mistress of the committee member, Li Yi also had another identity. She was the boss of the Golden Bath Center. Her identity was also revealed from Charlie's mouth. She had been active in Yueyang for a long time, taking in girls who had been abducted and sold. Through various illegal and cruel means, she forced the girls to engage in illegal activities. Now Yi Qian was the girl she wanted to abduct. She, who was in charge of Yueyang, had the backing of the committee member, the leader of the cult. She hired members of the cult to specifically find girls who liked to reap without sowing and then used various reasons to abduct girls in Yueyang. Then she controlled the personal freedom of the girls and used threats and promises to make these girls willingly sell their bodies in order to obtain money. It was precisely because they were abducting girls who liked to reap without sowing that they had never been discovered. No girls chose to call the police because they were often willing to stay after tasting the sweetness. Li Yi's life experience was also very rough. When she was young, she didn't like to study. All she wanted was to live a good life. After dropping out of school in junior high, she entered society and dated a boyfriend who was twice her age. Young and ignorant, she thought that she had found a life support, a man who was willing to spend money for her, who knew that her boyfriend would turn around and sell her to a snakehead who specialized in organizing girls to sell their bodies in the sauna centers and foot massage centers in Zhejiang. Li Yi, who had resisted before, received a customer for the first time. Because of her beautiful appearance, she was forced to sit at the bar on the first day and received a total of 800 yuan. The snakehead took 400 yuan for the tea and gave her the remaining 400 yuan. In 1988, she could earn 800 yuan a day, which was more than the 9-to-5 jobs of the city's office workers. From then on, Li Yi no longer ran away and no longer thought about leaving. She peacefully became a hostess. Li Yi, who was used to a life of drunkenness, went further and further away. When she was 30 years old and no longer young, She met a man who was generous and spent a lot of money. Although he was not handsome, he could bring her to high-end places. He could buy a car and a house whenever he wanted. From 1994 to 1999, Li Yi had followed this man for 6 years. She became the lady boss and the procuress, taking in girls who were as ambitious as she was back then and liked to reap without sowing. If someone didn't submit to her, she would use such violent means as defiling, beating, and imprisoning to force them to submit. In Li Yi's words, who can you blame for your own bad luck? In the past 4 years, she couldn't even remember how many girls had been beaten to death or crippled by Li Yi, but so what? If he hadn't behaved himself back then, he would have been beaten to death long ago. That was why it was said that one had to accept one's fate. If one didn't accept one's fate, they would end up in a miserable state. The car swayed as it moved. Some of the villagers in the car started smoking, while the familiar ones started chatting loudly. The whole car was noisy and noisy. They were also whispering about what had happened just now, but they didn't dare to let the people in the car hear them. In the back of the car, Yi Qian had already opened his heart to Li Yi and told her everything. I don't want to go home. It's so boring. Sis, where is this car going? I didn't look and just jumped into the car. I don't even know where it's going. Chapter 1486. When Li Yi heard this, the smile on her face deepened and became more sincere. She liked this kind of girl. She was naive, self-righteous, and most importantly, she ran away from home. It's good to be young. You can leave whenever you want without any burden. This car is going to a small county. It's also the most beautiful county in Yuyang. There are many mountains around it, and many foreign tourists love to go there to play. Take my husband's house for example. When I agreed to marry him, it was because I was fascinated by the scenery in his village. Li Yi was a very chatty woman, and she was also a very smart woman. When she heard that Yi Qian didn't even plan where she was going, she began to seduce Yi Qian without leaving a trace. If Yi Qian was really a girl who didn't hide from worldly affairs, after nearly an hour of chatting, she would definitely completely believe Li Yi, who gave off a generous and kind impression. No wonder the big committee member only trusted Li Yi despite having so many mistresses. With her glib tongue and outstanding interpersonal skills, it was easy for her to gain the big committee member's favor. Yi Qian, who had been tricked for so long, began to fish for information. She tilted her head and asked excitedly, "Is it really that beautiful? Where is it? Is there food? Where do you live? Are the people there good? I heard that the people in the village like to raise dogs. Will I be bitten by a dog if I go there?" "There's a chance. The fish has taken the bait," Li Yi quickly said. "Beautiful, very beautiful. If you go there, you won't want to leave. That place is the most beautiful mountain village in our county. There's food and shelter. The villagers are very kind. There are definitely dogs. As long as you don't run around, they won't bite." With dogs and villagers covering for the big committee member, it would be more difficult to escape once they were discovered. They would be surrounded by the whole village. The few police officers who were sacrificed were like this. "I see. I'm most afraid of dogs." Yi Qian hesitated and sighed. "I don't have anywhere to go. I don't want to go where there are dogs. Sister, is there a hotel in your county?" If Li Yi kept an eye on her, she would definitely think of a way to restrain the dogs in the village. Then she could quickly contact the high school student, Fu Hui. When their ugly faces were exposed, he would first confuse the dogs guarding the house, so that Captain Xia and the others could sneak into the village. Every word he said had a deeper meaning. Yi Qian entered the village and began to deploy his troop. To Li Yi, whatever Yi Qian said was not a problem at all. She said straightforwardly, "What's so difficult about that? When the time comes, we just have to lock the dog up." After saying that, he pretended to be surprised and said, "Hey, little sister, you want to go to my husband's village to take a look?" She thought that she was the one who had fished, but she did not know that she was the one who had been caught. She had been firmly hooked by Yi Qian's bait. Why were they in such a hurry to rush from Huzhou to Yang? It was because the police had grasped Li Yi's movements and knew what kind of plan would make her fall for it. Yi Qian was a female soldier sent by the military to assist the Yuyang police. She was asked to be the vanguard to lure Li Yi into the enemy's territory. This was the mission given to her by the military. The fish had been hooked. Yi Qian, who was extremely patient, did not immediately pull in the net. The target was too cunning and had to be dealt with carefully. After chatting for another 10 minutes, Yi Qian nodded and agreed with a smile. He said, "Sister, you're so nice. Then I'll bother you for a few days. I won't be staying for too long. When you leave, I'll go with you." The smile on Li Yi's face was unusually deep. She did not expect to gain so much. A few hours of driving was worth it. Chapter 1487. Looking at the girl's fair skin and beautiful appearance, especially her pair of black eyes that were as bright as the stars in the sky. When she looked at people, there was a hint of seduction. Suddenly, Li Yi felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. She was young and beautiful while she was old and weak. She lived her life carefully, afraid that she would be abandoned by her lover. In the end, she did not have a place to live. Thinking about the goods in her hands, it was really infuriating. Comparing goods, one had to throw them away. Looking at the goods in her hands, she even boasted that her goods were the best in the whole of Guilin. Tsk. Now, she had learned something new. Compared to the girl in front of her, the goods in her house were as different as clouds and mud. They had to be thrown away one by one. It seemed like she had to raise the standards of her goods. Otherwise, when the customers got tired of her, she would have to close the door. People live for freedom and happiness. I think you are an open-minded and cheerful person. If you feel uncomfortable, just walk around. When you come to our village, I will play with you. When the time comes, I will find a few villagers to take you to hunt pheasants and wild rabbit. As Li Yi spoke, she wanted to hold Yi Qian's hand to show her affection, but she grabbed nothing. Yi Qian, who pretended to be very interested, clapped his hands and said excitedly, "Really? Hunting with a shotgun like the ones on TV?" After years of training, there were thin calluses between his palms and fingers. The calluses between his left and right thumbs and index fingers were from holding a gun. Li Yi, a criminal with a handgun for self-defense, could not rule out the possibility that she knew something. Li Yi did not mind that she did not hold his hand. She answered with a smile, "Yes, hunting with a shotgun. But the shotguns in our village are different. When the time comes, I will let you see." There were guns, but the number was unknown. Yi Qian's pupils constricted slightly. He picked up the bottle of mineral water and took a sip. The overseas organization provided guns, bullets, and drugs. She needed to find out if these dangerous items, which were banned by private individuals, were in the village. As such, she had a few things to do before she could contact Captain Xia. First, meet with Fu Hui. Second, find the remains of the sacrificed police officers. Third, find out the location of the prohibited weapons and the approximate number. Fourth, draw the terrain of the entire village. Find out if the entire village was a member of the evil cult and if there was support from the neighboring villages. However, he could ask Fu Hui about it first. 5 of the dogs in the village need to be dealt with collectively. Yi Qian's mind spun as she sorted out the things that needed to be done one by one. Her expression did not change as she looked at Li Yi, who had exaggerated in order to trick her. Yi Qian's gaze turned slightly cold. According to the information, Li Yi's crimes were monstrous. She would send people to beat, scold, defile, and torture the disobedient young girls she had abducted. There was no other path for such a person other than death. How could Li Yi, who continued to talk to Yi Qian, know that she was in danger? In order to coax Yi Qian to follow her obediently, She had to talk so much that her saliva ran dry several times. At noon, they boarded the bus until 6 o'clock in the evening. The worn-out bus finally arrived at the small county town. Li Yi stared at Yi Qian as soon as she got off the bus. She purposely tried to scare him. The small county town is a little messy. Don't run around. If you get harassed by the local ruffians, even Sister Li can't save you. Yi Qian said disapprovingly, I can ask the police for help. I'm not afraid. Look, what a naive girl. She still wants to ask the police. In such a small place, the police and the people are family. Li Yi did not say anything. She only gave Yi Qian a meaningful look. She pointed at a food stall with its lights on across the road. That's owned by Sister Li's sister-in-law. Let's sleep at her place tonight. Tomorrow morning, we'll go to Sister Li's husband's place. Chapter 1488. Guilin was located in the southwestern hinterland of our country, bordering 5 provinces. It was the transportation hub of the entire southwest. From Huzhou to Guilin was equivalent to crossing half of the country, from the north to the southwest. The small county that Yi Qian lived in was located in a relatively remote location in Guilin province. It was surrounded by mountains and had beautiful scenery. At night, the entire county was pitch black. There weren't even any street lights. Sitting in a room filled with the smell of all kinds of food, Yi Qian lowered his head and sipped the water that had just been poured out from a thermos. A woman in her 30s with slightly dark skin was talking non-stop. Li Yi introduced this person to him as her sister-in-law. Her name was Wang Gui. Her name was correct, but her identity had to be changed. Wang Gui, one of the committee members' mistresses, was responsible for the communication between the small county and the mountain village. She promptly reported the information that Li Yi had gathered from the city to the committee member. She had 2 thin, willowy eyebrows, and her eyes would flicker from time to time when she spoke. At a glance, one could tell that she was a restless woman. As for her personality, she was quite enthusiastic like Li Yi. When she saw Yi Qian enter, she was stunned for a second. Then, she warmly welcomed Yi Qian as if he was an important guest. In a short while, she praised him as if he was a fairy. Anyone who heard it would feel a little elated. From the moment he entered until now, Yi Qian had drunk 2 glasses of water in a row and had not stopped. When faced with such a calm person like Yi Qian, no matter how much she praised, her heart was not affected at all. However, she still had to pretend to be shy. She held her breath and made her face look a little red. The more she acted like this, the less vigilant Li Yi became. She secretly gave Wang Gui a provocative look, and a smug smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Wang Gui relied on the fact that she had been with the committee member for a year. Every day, she tried her best to get the shop in Yueyang into her hands. When she failed, she abused Li Yi's authority. Bah! Wang Gui, you want to fight with me? You're too inexperienced. Wang Gui, who was angered by Li Yi's gaze, felt a dull pain in her chest. Unconsciously, even the smile on her face became a little stiff. The powder on her face was a little thick, and under the dim yellow light, one could see the creases at the corners of her eyes and lips. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he patted his forehead exaggeratedly. Look at my memory. After chatting for so long, I still didn't forget to ask if you guys had dinner. You definitely haven't eaten, right? It takes 5 to 6 hours to travel from the city to our county. Wang Gui was quite smart. She didn't immediately vent the anger in her heart. She simply changed the topic. Didn't Li Yi say that she intended to starve the goods she brought over? Pfft, it was not what she wanted. But he couldn't really go against her, but he had no choice. Li Yi was the woman most trusted by the committee member, and he still had to rely on her to make money in Yueyang. Even if he had an unclear relationship with the committee member, he didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of Yi Qian, who was drinking water in a refined manner, glanced at the 2 of them without leaving a trace. His eyes moved slightly, and a trace of understanding flashed through the depths of his pupils. Wang Gui and Li Yi were not on good terms. "I'm not hungry. Little sister, are you hungry?" Li Yi, who was secretly gritting her teeth, turned her head and said to Yi Qian with a smile, "I didn't have much of an appetite after sitting in the car for a few hours. I didn't even care if you were hungry, little sister." Wang Gui was a good person now. Bah, who did she think she was? Yi Qian, who was drinking water, didn't need to say anything. She only needed to smile at whoever said something. It was easy to provoke the two of them to dislike each other. Chapter 1489. Yi Qian smiled at Li Yi. Wang Gui stood up with pain in her chest and said lightly, "I'll cook some noodles for you. My husband wants to go out to play cards tonight and asked me to cook dinner early. I'll have to trouble my sister to eat noodles." Li Yi also stood up and apologized with a fake smile. "Thank you for your hard work. I'll sleep upstairs with my sister tonight." Then she looked at the open door and walked towards it while saying, "Who would come to buy things at this late hour? Leaving the door open in the middle of the night, my sister from the city might be a little scared. I'll go lock the door." Her intention was to prevent Yi Qian from leaving. At this time, Wang Gui had to put down her complaints about Li Yi. "Okay, lock the door again. The streets haven't been peaceful recently. The ruffians in the county are getting more and more lawless. They even dare to come to other people's shops to ask for money. Brother-in-law likes to go out to play cards at night. Then you should be careful at home alone. Don't get bullied." Li Yi's words were sarcastic. What a promiscuous woman. No wonder the ruffians in the county liked to come to your house. After locking the door, Li Yi said, "She'll go to the kitchen to take a look." Then she felt relieved and left Yi Qian alone. She followed him into the kitchen. Yi Qian looked at her back as she left. The faint smile at the corner of her mouth suddenly became cold and bone-chilling. Then she quietly got up. It was not difficult for her to deal with Li Yi and Wang Gui. "Oh, our house is small. Don't dirty your clothes," Wang Gui said sarcastically as she rinsed the pot until it made a hua-hua sound. She used so much strength that it seemed like she was going to scrape off a layer of Li Yi's skin. The committee member called and said that she'll send someone to pick you up early in the morning. She asked if you brought everything. She did not know what the committee member was like. A woman who was almost 40 years old was really concerned about it. Li Yi did not enter the kitchen. She leaned against the door and lazily flicked her fingertips. "I brought everything." Did she say anything else? "I didn't say anything else. It's just your stupid idea last time to get rid of the policeman who entered the village. Now it's great. The committee member is so busy now." Wang Gui pushed the blame even harder, as if he couldn't wait to see the bottom of the pot. He probably thought that he was making fun of someone he didn't like. Hearing her mention the previous incident again, Li Yi's face darkened. "Hasn't the matter been resolved? Why? Is there a problem?" Outside, Yi Qian clenched his fist. There was a cold glint in his dark eyes like a sharp blade. The sacrificed policeman was actually killed by Li Yi. With his back pressed against the cold wall, Yi Qian exhaled softly and continued to listen carefully to the voices coming from inside. Suddenly, Yi Qian moved his feet and returned to his original position as quickly and nimbly as possible. Li Yi, who had quietly walked out, sneaked a peek outside. When she saw that Yi Qian was sitting properly, she felt relieved and returned to the kitchen. "What's there to see? She's already in your hands. Do you think she can escape?" Wang Gui directly grabbed a handful of chopped green onions and sprinkled them into the bowl. She turned to look at the cautious Li Yi, lowered her voice and mocked, "I don't know if there's a problem, but I know that the small county hasn't been very quiet recently. My mahjong friends at the bus station said that recently, there have been some people who don't look like ordinary people coming over from time to time." Hearing that, Li Yi's heart skipped a beat. Ever since she had gotten rid of the policeman in the village, she had not been able to calm down for a single day. It turned out that she would only be able to come over 2 days later. When she received the call that day, she immediately left. She did not bring anything else but her passbook. Chapter 1490. You're thinking too much. What's the problem? Suppressing the panic that suddenly rose in her heart, Li answered angrily, but she paid attention in her heart. Whenever there was an unusual person or a good car in the county, Wang Gui's mahjong friends would come over to inform her in advance. If they said that there was a problem, then there was probably a problem. Yi Qian, who held his breath a little, narrowed his eyes slightly. If that was the case, then Captain Xia and the others needed to cover for them. The criminal whose real name was Chen Jiafu had a great influence in the small county. The cult's power was like a net that enveloped the sparsely populated county. No wonder the police were so cautious, and no wonder the Director General requested military support. Without military support, it would be difficult to control the influence. If you say there's no problem, then I'll take it that there's no problem. What are you going to do with the goods outside? Do you really want to bring them back to the committee member? Wang Gui put the pot on the gas stove, turned around, and saw Li Yi leaning against the door again. The corners of her mouth twitched, and she snorted contemptuously. She was almost 40 years old. Why was she still pretending to be young? The goods outside were the ones who were called young. Why was Li Yi pretending to be young? She received a text message this afternoon saying that she had brought a good over. In the text message, she praised the good. TSK, TSK, TSK. She felt sick of it when she saw it. Who knew that Li Yi was not exaggerating this time? She was really as beautiful as a fairy. I say, why did you suddenly become so generous? You actually want to bring a young and beautiful girl back. Aren't you afraid that the committee member will kick us away when he goes abroad? Wang Gui's words had always been unpleasant to the ears, and Li Yi was too lazy to argue with her. Her face changed when she heard the last sentence. Wang Gui even knew about going abroad. Not many people knew about this, and Wang Gui was definitely someone who did not know. Li Yi, who was shocked, couldn't help but straighten her body. If even Wang Gui knew, then, did anyone else know? The water in the pot boiled until it was hot. Wang Gui, who was stirring the noodles with a spoon, did not notice that Li Yi's face was a little gloomy. She glanced sideways at the door and waved for Li Yi to come to her side. Last week, when I sent oil, salt, rice, and vinegar over, I accidentally heard the committee member contacting the outside, saying something about arranging the time to go abroad as soon as possible. Do you think the committee will want to go abroad? Ever since those policemen were dealt with, the news outside was unusually tight. It was said that even the capital was alarmed, but he didn't know if it was true. It turned out that she had overheard it. Li Yi's heart was slightly relieved. He had to ask her if she had told anyone else, such as Wang Gui's husband who was a cuckold. None of the people he sent out returned, and there was no news at all. It was obvious that they were either not caught or had been cleaned up by the police. Tongzhou International Hotel should have been on fire the night before, but it wasn't. Mr. Charlie called and told her that the Beijing commissioner who investigated them did not stay in the International Hotel at all, but the Tongzhou police had sent people to surround the hotel. If he hadn't used the identity of a foreigner to enter the hotel and take the 6 members who were responsible for the arson away, 1 or 2 of them might have been caught by the police. They were being watched so closely that they had begun to set up traps to capture them. It was likely that even Yuyang City had people mixed in with them. Perhaps, even the small county town had sent people to secretly investigate. Chapter 1491. Once the police knew that the committee member was trying to go abroad, she would not be able to leave. It had not been so serious in the past. Ever since she killed those policemen, life in the association had not been easy. She had received several calls from informants, saying that the higher-ups were secretly investigating the brothels in Yuyang City. She must not cause any more trouble. Wang Gue could not be left alive. Li Yi's face turned cold when she had the intention to kill. However, Wang Gue did not notice anything with her back facing her. She was also scheming in her heart. Li Yi was the committee member's most trusted woman. Any news from her mouth could not be fake. She rolled her eyes a few times. In the end, because she was uneasy, she could only smile and ask carefully, "Don't you have any news in the city?" I heard the committee member's tone. "It's really not very good. You're probably going abroad." Li Yi could become the committee member's most trusted woman. How could she be a simple person? Hearing that, she rolled her eyes and deliberately mocked. Wang Gue, what bad ideas are you scheming again? I didn't even know that the committee member was going abroad. How could you eavesdrop? She said in a tone of disbelief. Did Li Yi not know? The committee member did not want to take her out? Wang Gui's abacus was rattling in her heart. She had never thought of going abroad. She only wanted to use the committee member's hands to make a fortune and then live a good life. However, she did not know that because of her words, she had attracted a fatal disaster. She had heard the committee member say that he was going abroad and even mentioned a Mr. Charlie. She knew that it was a foreigner's name. However, Li Yi said that she did not know if the committee member was going abroad. Lying to her? Or did Li Yi really not know? Wang Gue, who was skeptical, used her chopsticks to scoop the cooked noodles into her bowl. When Li Yi saw this, she directly snatched the chopsticks from her hand. Don't scoop too much noodles. Do you really want to feed her? Wang Gue, even if you have a problem with me, you have to know your limits. What can I have against you? You do it yourself. Wang Gue turned her waist and simply ignored her. When she saw that there were less than 5 mouthfuls of noodles left in the bowl, Wang Gue pouted and muttered to herself, "A woman's heart is the most vicious." Li Yi, who had always been cautious, did not want to talk to her anymore. How could she let a girl who had not been completely seduced be completely full? Even if she brought her to the shop and locked her up, she would not let them be full. The reason was very simple. Humans, once they were full, they would toss and turn. However, she was someone who disliked tossing and turning. You really don't know that the committee member is going abroad? Li Yi, let's have a heart-to-heart talk. The big committee member is going to go abroad. If he stays, we will have to suffer. When Li Yi was about to leave with the bowl, Wang Gue, who did not give up, suddenly asked again. I don't know. Li Yi, who was holding a bowl of hot noodles, replied coldly with a flash of ruthlessness in her eyes. I'm afraid that Wang Gue can't be left alive. He has brought up the matter of the big committee member. If I really want to deal with him, I have to talk to the big committee member. After taking 2 steps, he stopped and turned around to meet Wang Gue, who was winking at him. She has a phone with her. I'll find a way to get it later. I know. You don't want to leave her with me. If you want to take her to the mountains, then take her to the mountains. I'll be happy to relax. Wang Gue did not feel embarrassed at being caught red-handed. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and pouted with an unwilling expression. Yi Qian, who had heard the whole story, had already sat down and was quietly waiting for Li Yi and the others to take away her phone. However, she did not intend to keep this phone. Chapter 1492. Li Yi came out and saw Yi Qian sitting obediently. She quickly put on a smile and said, Come. Sister, have a bowl of hot noodles. You can rest early after eating. Of course, she had to eat until she was full. Only when she was full would she have the strength to work. Yi Qian needed to conserve her strength and energy. There was also a small accident when they were eating noodles. The mobile phone on the table was knocked to the ground by Li Yi. When she picked it up and returned it to Yi Jian, it fell into the noodle soup. Yi Jian calmly watched her and Wang Gui's performance and finally took away the burnt mobile phone. At 8:30 p.m. Li Yi took Yi Qian to the second floor to rest. She said that she and Wang Gui had not seen each other for a long time and had a lot to talk about. She didn't want to talk. She wanted to know if Wang Gui had told anyone about the committee member going abroad. Wang Gui was probably doomed. She could see the murderous intent on Li Yi's face. Lying in bed, Yi Qian listened to the sound of the truck's engine and siren as it drove by. Her heart was calm. If Wang Gui was really doomed, she wouldn't stand up to help her. She had done a lot of things to help the wicked. She deserved to die. Yi Qian, who had lived 2 lives, had experienced many things in her previous life. While she was arming herself, she was also indifferent to some things. She had a strong sense of responsibility, but if she was asked to help someone who deserved to die, she couldn't do it even if she wore a military uniform. Unless it was an order from the higher-ups, she would definitely not step in. Yi Qian, who was clear about right and wrong, would never abuse her kindness. She could distinguish between good and evil, and could also distinguish between beauty and ugliness. Wang Gui, who belonged to the evil category, would not be listed as her protector. Downstairs, Li Yi said with a cold expression, "You know a lot of people, and now is a special time. You should watch your mouth and don't bring trouble to the committee member. It's impossible for her to go abroad. If the committee member is gone, who will lead our God-leader church? How can we manage so many believers in the church? Wang Gui, if you dare to say things you shouldn't say outside, the committee member will be the first to not let you off. Li Yi, you better watch your mouth. You want to splash dirty water on me? No way. I'm also a core member of the church. How could I not know what you're talking about?" Wang Gui jumped up and slapped the table. She had wanted to quarrel with the other party for a long time. Now that the other party had come knocking on her door, there was no need for her to be polite. "You old B***tch, you want to monopolize all the benefits that the committee member brings to you? Don't even think about it. Did you disturb the goods upstairs? Do you know why I personally took action?" There were more and more believers in the society, and the committee members had to help them. If I don't work hard to earn money, how can the committee member help them? How can we make those believers believe in us and do things for us? Li Yi saw that her expression didn't seem to be lying, and her heart was relieved. If Wang Guizhen was someone who didn't know the gravity of the situation, the committee member wouldn't have nurtured her as a backbone. There was another advantage to being a backbone. If something happened, they could be pushed out to take the blame. After learning that Wang Gui did not tell anyone, she immediately called the committee member to see how to deal with it. Committee member, Chen Jiafu never took the initiative to contact the backbone below. Even if Li Yi looked for him, she had to go through the backbone left in the village. One more person knows, one more danger. Charlie is still applying for passports for us. We have to wait to deal with her. Chen Jiafu's voice was a little rough on the phone. Chapter 1493. This was a middle-aged man who had only studied in primary school. He had been sent abroad to work, and when he came back, he had established a God's church and had been active for 4 years. Li Yi was relieved. "You're right. Wang Gui knows too much about us. If we don't solve it, you won't feel at ease even if you go abroad. In Beijing." She wanted to say more, but Chen Jiafu, who was more vigilant than anyone else, immediately stopped her. "Okay, if you have anything to say, come to the village. As for the goods in your hands, if they are really good, bring them to the village first." There were too many things that needed money outside. Recently, the situation was so tense that he couldn't go out to earn money. Now, he could only wait and see when Charlie could settle the matter and let him get away safely. Getting rid of a few policemen actually exposed him. He really didn't expect that. Charlie analyzed that there was a mole in the village who reported him to the outside. If there was a mole in the village, even if he decided to go abroad, he had to find out. He had already shouldered so many lives, and he didn't care about one more. He asked about the girl's background, whether there was anyone else with her when she came out, her family situation, personality, etc. Li Yi answered truthfully without hiding anything. Chen Jiafu had always trusted her. After asking a few more questions, he hung up the phone. When both sides got the news, Li Yi, who had an idea in her heart, was relieved. Since the committee members said that they wanted to get rid of Wang Gui, then she had nothing to worry about. When Li Yi came back, it was already past 11 at night. Yi Qian, who was alert, heard her unlocking the door and tiptoed into the room. The wind blew, but Yi Qian didn't smell the blood on her. It seemed that Wang Gui was still alive for the time being. After entering the room, Li Yi didn't turn on the lights. She only flashed the flashlight in her hand. She saw that the girl she had kidnapped was lying on the bed without a trace of suspicion. She gently picked up the small bag that Yi Qian had been carrying and walked out of the room. 5 minutes later, Li Yi returned to the room with the bag that had been checked clean. She took off her clothes and lay down. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Li Yi, who had a lot on her mind, was still awake. Yi Qian, who woke up from his sleep, gently closed his eyes and continued to sleep in the same position. After a while, he fell asleep completely. After the sky was high, a tough battle began. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Yi Qian and Li Yi, who had not slept the previous night, boarded a small four-wheeled farm truck. She sat in the middle, with the driver on her left and Li Yi on her right. "It's a bit far to the mountains. Sister, if you didn't sleep well, you can rest on Sister Li's shoulder and have a good sleep." Li yawned and chatted with Yi Qian. As they chatted, she fell asleep first. Before setting off from Yuyang, the Yuyang police told him that it would take 4 hours to get from the small county to the mountain. After that, he would have to take a motorcycle. That was not all. He would have to walk more than 30 kilometers on the mountain road to reach the mountain. Transportation was inconvenient and surrounded by mountains. It was difficult to enter and even more difficult to exit. It was said that it was not too far away, and the transportation was quite convenient. Some mountain villages required one to walk for a day. After getting off the four-wheeled farm vehicle, they sat on a shabby motorcycle. After riding for about 3 hours, they arrived at a poor and backward mountain village. 2 men who claimed to be relatives led the way and began to climb over the mountains. It took Yi Qian an entire day to arrive at the place where the committee member Chen Jiafu was hiding. They set off at 5 o'clock in the morning and didn't enter the village until 7 o'clock in the evening. Chapter 1494. Li Yi did not bring Yi Qian to see Chen Jiafu. She came here for an urgent matter. Yi Qian was only here to lure him back. When they entered the village, she arranged for Yi Qian to go to another villager's house. This was a small village with no more than 30 families inside and outside the mountains. It used to represent poverty, backwardness, and the elderly had no one to rely on. But now, it had become a mountain village where every family had money to spare, especially Chen Jiafu's sisters and relatives. They had all built 2-story buildings and lived the good life in their hearts. Chen Jiafu had a certain level of intelligence to be able to survive in such a small village as an illegal organization that made use of rumors, spread fallacious theories, deceived, and bewitched members to control and recruit members in order to save mankind, spread religious doctrines, and collect money by any means necessary, thus endangering the stability of society. He knew very well how to unite the villagers, and he also knew how to seek protection. Even if the villagers in the village had become his shelter, they had also become his eyes and ears. Chen Jiafu would immediately know if there was even the slightest bit of movement. The few policemen who had been sacrificed were tipped off by the villagers. Li Yi had come up with a plan, and in less than half a day, they had been cruelly killed by them. Yi Qian, who was walking on a muddy path in the dark mountain village, followed closely behind a villager. Behind her were two middle-aged women from the village. They were supposed to be escorts. Li did not follow. She had already gone to look for Qin Jiafu. After climbing up a small slope, Yi Qian couldn't help but raise his head and look about 300 meters away from him. That was the direction Li left in. A villager was holding a torchlight at the back, while she walked in front towards a 100-year-old maple tree that was lush with leaves that couldn't be concealed by the night. Chen Jiafu lived next to the 100-year-old maple tree. Yi Qian did not stop. He glanced at the villagers from the corner of his eyes and followed them. Sister Li, where is she going? After taking a few steps, Yi Qian deliberately stopped and asked. The two villagers at the back looked at each other. One of them, a middle-aged woman, replied, "She went to her husband's house. It's getting late. We'll send you there and still have to go home. Let's go." She did not want to say a single word to Yi Qian. She was on high alert. Yi Qian did not ask any more questions. If he did, it would arouse their disgust and alertness. Moreover, she only needed to know that the direction Li was heading in was indeed where Qin Jiafu was. However, he still had to ask a few more people to confirm. But what she didn't expect was that Li actually arranged for her to go to Fu Hui's house. Fu Hui was the only girl in the village who had attended high school. She was also the only girl in the village who had read a lot of books. If it wasn't for her report, the Guilin police wouldn't have been able to find out the origin of the Master Church and where the main crimes were committed. As for Fu Hui's parents, they looked honest. It was hard to imagine that their hands were stained with evil. The man and two women who were in charge of watching over Yi Qian pulled Fu Hui's parents to a dark corner and whispered, "Sister Li will be bringing him back to Yuyang in a few days. Keep a close eye on him and tell your daughter to be more alert. Leave it to my family. Sister Li's business is our family's business." Fu Hui was extremely anxious. She pulled Yi Qian into her room. "Where did you come from? Why did he come here with Sister Li? Do you know where this is? What's your family's phone number? Hurry up and tell me." Chapter 1495. To see if a person was sincere to another person, the answer could be seen in his eyes. Without a doubt, Fu Hui's concern for Yi Qian was sincere. She was very, very concerned about Yi Qian, and was also very, very worried about her situation. The adults in front of them were still talking, and their eyes would occasionally look towards the house. After talking for a while, the three villagers who had escorted Yi Qian here left in the night. "Tell Fu Hui to keep a close eye on them. Big Sister Li has agreed. How can we get this done? Our son will have the capital to marry a wife." Fu Hui's father couldn't hold back the excitement in his heart. He quietly said to his wife, "When the time comes, we'll take out the family's savings and buy a house for our son in the city." Nowadays, the villagers in the mountains all went to the city. Every one of them wanted to buy a house in the city. Of course, they wanted to buy it for their son, for the rest of their lives to depend on. As for their daughter, they never considered her. Fu Hui's parents were the same. Fu Hui was originally studying in the town's high school. Perhaps because of one sentence from Li Yi, the couple immediately asked Fu Hui to drop out of school and stay at home obediently. Li Yi was afraid that Fu Hui, who was good at studying, would become wild after getting into university. She might even help outsiders to deal with the village, and she might even report the committee members. To prevent trouble before it happened, she used the reason of leaving her daughter at home to earn money for her son to marry a wife as an excuse to persuade Fu Hui's parents to let Fu Hui, who had good grades, drop out of school and return to the village. In the depths of Guilin Mountain, it was normal for girls to drop out of school. For a girl like Fu Hui, who was good at studying, to drop out of school, it was also normal. Therefore, Fu Hui's suspension of school didn't attract the attention of the teachers, nor did it attract the attention of the school. It was also because of this incident that Fu Hui, who had never been in the know, found out that her parents had committed a crime. After a week of internal struggle, Fu Hui used the excuse of going to school to get her textbooks as an excuse to report the incident in the village. However, the timing of her report was too coincidental. It just so happened that the Gillen police were investigating this incident. She was afraid that the police would be alerted to this incident, so she rashly acted before they had any evidence of the God's church and sacrificed her own brother. As the only student in the village who dared to stand up and fight against evil, Yi Qian greatly admired Fu Hui's courage. Although the girl in front of him wasn't beautiful, she had a kind heart and a pair of eyes filled with sincerity. Looking at her, who was so concerned about her and worried about her, Yi Jian felt a warm current flowing through her heart. She said softly, "Thank you for your concern. I'm fine." The sound of footsteps came from outside. It was Fu Hui's parents. Yi Jian, who didn't reveal her identity to Fu Hui, stood aside obediently. She was reserved in an unfamiliar environment and shy in front of strangers. Fu Hui's parents were already middle-aged. Their faces were covered with frost from hard work. The joints of their hands were large, which was also the result of years of hard work. Looking at them, Yi Jian's gaze was a little cold. Their ignorance had not only ruined this family, but also cost their daughter, Fu Hui's life. And their reason was so laughable. It was so that their son could marry a wife and buy a house in the city. Chapter 1496. Sacrificing their daughter for their son, did they ever regret it? Clearly, Fu Hui's parents never regretted it. They only had their son in their eyes. "Keep an eye on her. If she runs away, I'll break your legs," Fu Hui's father warned in a low voice. His eyes, which should have been simple and honest, had a cruel indifference. He cared about his own life and used other people's pain to fulfill his own wish. Fu Hui's mother looked at Yi Qian as if she was measuring the value of an object. She looked up and down, then up and down, back and forth. Suddenly, her eyes turned, and there was a flicker in her eyes. This girl was really not an ordinary good girl. Her eyes were big, her skin was white, and her mouth was small. She also had an aura about her. The girls in the village were not spirited, and her body was clean. One look and one could tell that she was a virgin. She pulled her husband, who was warning her daughter, and used her eyes to tell him to talk outside. Then she said to Fu Hui, "Keep an eye on her. If anything happens, your father will be angry." Women in the mountains did not have any thoughts of sovereignty. Their men had the final say in the family. Fu Hui did not know if the girl in her home could understand their native language. Seeing her parents helping a villain, she did not feel good. She tried to persuade her parents to turn back, but in return, she was beaten up. They even warned her that if she did not listen, they would sell her to Li Yi and use the money to buy a wife for her stupid brother. Seeing that her parents were so stubborn that they even said that they would sell her, Fu Hui, who had always been filial to her parents, was very sad. She also knew that the so-called God's church in the village was the evil cult that was reported in the news. Her parents had been brainwashed, and could never go back to the past. "Tonight, when you sleep, don't take off your clothes. I'll take you out of our village. Don't ask why, just follow me." Fu Hui could not bear to see the girl in front of her fall into Li Yi's hands, but she could not say too much. She was afraid that the other party would be afraid, so she could only say a few words vaguely. Yi Qian already believed that the girl in front of him sincerely wanted to help him. His eyes were as bright as the stars and as bright as jade waves as he smiled at the girl and said softly, "Hello Fu Hui, I am Yi Qian, the leader sent by the noble Lin police. I am also here to protect your personal safety. Trust me, Fu Hui. I will not let anything happen to me. At the same time, I will bring you out of the mountain village safely." Yi Qian spoke a little fast. He told Fu Hui what he needed to do urgently. "I need your help now. Find the dead officers. Before he could finish his words, he saw Fu Hui's face turn pale, and fear appeared in her eyes. She quickly looked outside and said with trembling lips, "Why are you the only one who came in?" "No, it's too dangerous here. You can't stay." Fu Hui couldn't accept or believe that a girl who looked about the same age as her would protect her. The land that gave birth to her and raised her had changed. The once kind and simple neighbors had changed. They were selfish, cold, heartless, and violent. These were the neighbors now. Yi Jian raised her hand and gently patted the girl who had been tormented day and night. "Trust me, Fu Hui. The fact that the police sent me here means that I have enough ability to deal with the difficulties you're facing now, which is also the difficulties we're facing now." Chapter 1497. Her voice was very soft, and there was no trace of panic when she spoke. There was only a visible calmness. Her gaze was calm and gentle, and the cold expression between her brows wiped away the panic in her heart. As calm as Mount Tai, as steady as a rock. Fu Hui gradually calmed down. Outside, Fu Hui's parents, who were discussing something, suddenly closed the front door and locked it with a lock. They left with a flashlight to illuminate the dark road. Seeing her parents leave, Fu Hui actually breathed a sigh of relief. They were supposed to be her dearest family, but things had turned out this way. Yi Qian sighed. "My parents have made a big mistake. If they continue, what awaits them is the death penalty. I have no way to persuade them to turn back, so I can only place my hopes on the police. I hope it's not too late." Without her family watching over her, Fu Hui smiled bitterly. Her eyes were red, and under the light, there were tears glistening in her eyes. She did not continue talking about herself. Raising her hand to touch the corner of her eyes, the strong girl very calmly picked out the important things to tell Yi Qian. The policemen who were killed were not buried in a place. Chen Jiafu said they were sinners, and did not deserve to be reborn. If they are not dealt with properly, they will become evil spirits and harm the villagers. So, what happened next was too gory. Fu Hui could not bear to say it even after thinking about it. Yi Qian gently closed his eyes to hide the anger in his eyes. Being cruelly dismembered. Even if he had been on the battlefield, he could not say it out loud. Chen Jiafu is very cruel, but the villagers in our village have been brainwashed by him. They follow his orders and treat his words like an imperial edict. Actually, it should be said that it was the will of God, but Fu Hui could not say it out loud. She, who had been standing, spoke of Chen Jiafu with undisguised hatred in her eyes. If it were not for him, her parents might be a little petty, but they would definitely not walk down the path of crime. However, if her parents could really stick to their principles, Chen Jiafu could not do anything about it. In the end, it was all because of one thing: money. I'm not sure how many people were involved in the killing of the policeman, but I know that my parents were probably involved. As she spoke, Fu Hui wiped her eyes again, and her voice became even more hoarse. "I'll get you something. Wait for me for a while." Fu Hui did not let Yi Qian stay for long. In less than 3 minutes, she returned to the room with a photo in her hand. When she handed it over, she said with a sad expression, "I found this in the pig manure pool in my backyard." That was why Fu said that her own parents were involved. In the photo, the young man was in high spirit. He was wearing a brand new police uniform and white gloves as he saluted the camera. This is one of the deceased police officers. He's only 24 years old. "Fu Hui, I need your help. No matter what, I have to find them so that their families can see their intact bodies." Yi Qian's eyes flashed coldly as he carefully put the photos away. He looked up and stared at Fu Hui quietly. "Tonight, I need to find them." The 18-year-old Fu Hui nodded. "Okay, I'll accompany you." "No, Fu Hui. You need to stay." Yi Qian smiled and shook his head. "You need to stay and cover for me. You can't let your parents find out that I left, and you can't let the villagers know my identity. I'll have to trouble you for the next 3 days. Chapter 1498. Fu Hui still wanted to say something, but Yi Qian said, "For your safety and mine, Fu Hui, you have to stay here. You need to help me with something. Just in case, I need to know how many dogs there are in the village, which families have them, and which don't." Every family has one. Fu Hui understood why Yi Qian asked that. The police officers were found by the dogs in the village. "I have one at home too, but it's locked up in the backyard." Hearing this, Yi Jian frowned slightly. If every family had a dog, it wouldn't be good. She didn't have enough medicine with her. Yi Qian unzipped his jacket and unzipped the side zipper. He took out the medicine hidden in his jacket. "This is concentrated medicine. Can make a dog go crazy instantly. Fu Hui, your dog. Let me do it." Fu Hui took the medicine and looked at Yi Qian with determination. "You arrange it. I'll listen to you." She could only trust the young policewoman in front of her. She had no other choice if she wanted to stop her parents from making more mistakes. In the one-story red brick bungalow, the two girls started their bold plan. Fu Hui's parents walked out of Chen Jiafu's house with happy faces. "Call our son and tell him to come home quickly. Now we don't even have to pay for a wife. Should we go to the city and buy them a house?" Fu Hui's mother said jubilantly. She had not worked for a few years and her body was a little fat. She looked like a kind person, but the words she said were unpleasant. "We have to get things done as soon as possible. This woman will only settle down after she gets married and has a child. We have to prepare as soon as possible." Fu Hui's father nodded. "That's right. Call our son tomorrow morning and tell him to come home quickly. Oh, and tell him on the phone that we found him a beautiful wife. She's not any worse than the ones out there." The daughter-in-law they were talking about was Yi Jian. Their son's marriage had been settled. The couple could even walk briskly now. It was past 8 o'clock in the evening and the mountain village was pitch black. The branches in the mountain were like ferocious monsters hibernating. Just looking at them would make people panic. The night insects chirped in the grass, bringing a trace of tranquility to the entire mountain village. Li Yi, who was sitting in the chair, had a gloomy face. She was unhappy with her lover's arrangement. How could he give such good goods to the Fu family? "Charlie, I couldn't get in touch with him today." "Yi, if you can't get in touch with him tomorrow, we will leave tomorrow night." Chen Jiafu, who was not handsome, but had a pair of cunning eyes. He smoked an expensive imported cigarette and said, "We made a wrong move. If we make one more mistake, we will spend the rest of our lives in prison." When Li Yi heard this, she took out the documents from her bag and placed them on the table. "In that case, the rumors outside are already very tense. All right, I'll listen to you. I'll do whatever you say. But what about Wang Gui? Have you thought of how to deal with her?" Chen Jiafu was really reluctant to deal with his mistress who had been with him for a year. However, it was not a matter of whether he was willing or not at this time. Wang Gui, who was horrified, looked at the young men who suddenly appeared in the house. Her chubby body kept shaking. "Brothers, I really don't know. I really picked up this mobile phone. If I told a lie, I will be struck by lightning." Wang Gui swore. She did not care about the consequences. She just wanted to get rid of this group of fierce men as soon as possible. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.